Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. I'm Mike Graham and this, of course, is the Mike Graham Show. As you can see, we've managed to refurb the sign back into blue, which we managed to do yesterday. For some reason yesterday when we started the show it was green. I don't know why. We've got lots to talk about this morning, including, of course, the fallout politically and also criminally from the Henry Nowak case. There was some demonstrations last night outside Southampton Police Station. Lots of stories this morning about how there's going to be a review of the race guidance that's been given to the police over the course of the last several years to stop the fact that there's two-tier policing. We've got the family of the knife killer Vikram Digwar now being charged with various different offences, including aiding and abetting his act of murder, hiding the weapons, also lying to the police. There's a whole storm of stuff that's coming in the wake of all the news that came yesterday once we were all able to see that terrible footage which we played you yesterday of the moment that young Henry Nowak was arrested by the police, put in handcuffs even as he lay dying on the streets of Southampton. It's a terrible story. We've got lots of other stories to talk about today as well, but this is obviously still the main event because at the end of the day, Britain has become almost kind of cataclysmically drawn to these episodes, I suppose you might say, of terrible criminality, terrible hurt, terrible pain, terrible kind of influence on families. And we've got headlines such as in The Sun, never again, dying Henry cuffed as killer lies he's racist, cop quits as row rages over two-tier policing. And of course, the entire political class has got itself in a right old stramash, as they say in Scotland, because if you're on the left-hand side of politics, you have to be very even-handed and nice, and you can't in any way suggest that there is some kind of anti-white racism going on in the country, because if you say something like that, you must be right-wing and nasty and possibly Nigel Farage-like. Nigel Farage addressed the nation yesterday and said things which I think most sensible people would have agreed with. Most sensible people would have said, yes, finally, somebody is acting in a prime ministerial fashion. Finally, somebody is speaking for the people of this country. And finally, something might be done about the ludicrous situation that we find ourselves in this country, where white people, who are in the massive majority, are somehow put upon by the DEI brigade and by the sort of politically correct people in the police, in the judiciary, in politics, in parliament, and in almost every single public sector organisation in the country, and in some private sector ones as well, that if you're white, you basically don't have any advantages whatsoever. In fact, possibly you have many disadvantages. And that, I think, is the story we will be expressing and the story we'll be traversing today and exploring to try and see what it is that we can do to return our country to some kind of normality. And in order to help us do that, we need to enlist very clever people. And of course, Stephen Barrett is one of those very clever people. He is our favourite barrister. He is here with us this morning. Stephen, a very good morning to you. Oh, he's not here yet. Oh, I apologise. Sorry. Guest not here. There you go. Now it says his guest not here. When we get him, he will join in, I'm sure, with many of the very famous voices that we've had so far to talk about what on earth is going on. Let me run through some of the headlines for you this morning in that case, because all of them have got one version or another of what it is that's going on. The Daily Express has got Kemi's fury at White Lives Matter comment. She wasn't happy about the fact that basically Nigel Farage came out yesterday and said what he said. She said, it shouldn't be about whether white lives matter or black lives matter. I just want all lives to matter. And that's all very well for her to say. But at the end of the day, that only works, of course, if in fact everybody does what they're supposed to do. But if you are, as we are told, many police officers are now instructed, given to supposedly side with the right person and go against the wrong person, if you're told that if there's a racial motivation for a crime being committed, you have to then side with the person who is supposedly the victim of that racial crime, then you get exactly what happened in the Henry Nowak case. You get exactly why things have gone wrong in this country. Front page of the Daily Mail has got Kemi Badenoch saying this needs to be a Stephen Lawrence moment. She's writing in the paper. She says police handcuffing the dying white teenager falsely accused of racism must now be a turning point. She compared the stabbing of the 18-year-old university student to the murder of Stephen Lawrence 33 years ago. Incredibly. Writing for the Mail, Mrs. Badenoch says, just like Stephen's shocking killing in 1993, Henry's death at the hands of an assailant who lied about claims of racism needs to be a turning point. And yes, it does need to be a turning point, but I think Kemi Badenoch also has to understand that people are quite rightfully angry. People are quite upset by what has happened. And maybe what we should do, Elena, is play a couple of clips, because that might show people where we are in this argument at the moment and why so many people seem to be very confused about what it is that's been going on. Let's have a look, first of all, shall we look at Robert Jenrick, which I think is number 8. Robert Jenrick on Kemi Badenoch's words. Have a look.
Kemi Badenoch has accused Nigel Farage of whipping people up with his comments about responding with pure cold rage. Do you agree with that?
I thought it was terrible, actually, that she chose, on this day of all days, to go out on TV and use this moment to criticise another political party's leader. Why? Why do that? Why not do something productive, which is to do what we in Reform, which is to demand change. Change the guidance, change the culture of police forces, not just go around and toss around accusations against other people. And why is it that she isn't willing to say that there is an issue with anti-white racism in this country? She was perfectly okay to tweet about Black Lives Matter not so long ago. I want everyone to be treated equally before the law. And that does begin with being honest that there is an issue with anti-white racism right now in this country.
That's all right. If you've gone early with the Starmer alert, it's not a problem, because it's always good. You can't have enough Starmer alerts, in my view. But Keir Starmer finally was woken from his torpor yesterday. He sent Shabana Mahmood, or as some people call her, Shabana Mahmood, and more on that later, to Parliament to make a statement about the death of Henry Nowak, the murder, indeed, of Henry, and the 18-year-old boy. But let's have a look at what he had to say when he finally said something about this horrible, horrible crime.
Henry Nowak was a kind, thoughtful, and much-loved young man. And this has understandably been devastating for his parents, for his family, and everybody who knew him. And I have seen the body cam footage. It's harrowing. And I have to say, as a father of a 17-year-old boy, I felt sick watching it. It is absolutely right that the IOPC are looking at this. There are clearly serious questions that need to be addressed, not least how accusations of racism informed the decision-making in this case. But my thoughts, I'm sure the thoughts of everybody in the country, are with Henry's family. His life has been stolen, and they are understandably devastated, and that is where I start on this.
Why does he do that thing with his fingers? What is that? Is it like some kind of secret code? Anyway, let's talk to Stephen Barrett, who I think is now here with us. Stephen, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Sorry to have to play Keir Starmer at you there first thing. I know it's a bit of a shock to wake up to. He finally woken up to the fact that something terrible happened in Southampton in December, which up until now he had completely ignored until he was more or less forced into having to say something. But isn't it ironic that here he is, the Prime Minister, sort of wondering with stroked chin how we got here? Well, I'll tell you how we got here, Starmer. We got here because people like you have created the atmosphere and the legal process and framework under which all of these people operate.
Yes, DEI,
yeah,
diversity, equality and inclusion and all of that rubbish has absolutely poisoned our public sector.
Yeah.
It's poisoned every inch of it, every millimeter of it. It's absolutely toxified it. It's completely politicized it. And that's how we get to the point where the police prioritize a false allegation of racism over a young man being stabbed. And that you cannot really avoid that. What happened in Southampton, what happened to Henry Nowak, one of the reasons why we must never forget him, and one of the reasons that we may, yet make something of this awful tragedy for the good, is that we have to notice that this is not accidental. This is the world Starmer, and I'm afraid to say the Conservative Party over 14 years, have embraced. This is the world of identity politics. This is ultimately where it gets you. This is two-tier justice, which is it's not accidental. It's not some officer messing up. It's baked into the system. This is just not the outcome. Starmer doesn't get to hold his hands in a really weird ritualistic fashion and pretend to be some sort of innocent victim in all of this, because exactly as you say, he is the cheerleader of this nonsense. They cult-like believe this, and they recite these mantras time after time after time. And the simple fact is, Mike, that all those of us who believe that all human beings are equal need to come together right now, and we need to force back the rule of law and get out of identity politics, because it's pure poison.
Yes, and this ludicrous notion that we have allowed to exist, which is that the police are instructed, not just advised, but instructed to treat different people differently. That cannot be in any way, shape or form the rule of law. I said yesterday, that this was, as you say, not a mistake made by the police. They didn't blunder. They didn't sort of forget to do things. They did all the things they were meant to do under the new rules of policing, because they were told, you must believe a man who says that he was racially abused, as opposed to looking with your eyes at a man who's lying on the ground, having been stabbed 5 times, who's telling you he can't breathe. That's the only explanation for what happened. We can punish the individual officers, but in the end, they were just doing what they were told.
In the end, they were doing what they've been trained to do, brainwashed to do by the College of Policing.
Yeah.
The ultimate big bad in this scenario is the College of Policing. But beyond that, the College of Policing itself is only doing it because they are part of this woke, progressive left. I mean, I would say Fabian Marxist, but really the labels don't matter.
Yeah.
All we know is that these people are absolute wrong-uns. Keir Starmer is absolutely one of them. Shabana Mahmood is absolutely one of them. And they are trying their damnedest to deflect from Henry's tragic death with anything they can, so that we don't notice that it's woke that did this. But it is, Mike, it is woke that did this.
No question at all. Apparently, the National Police Chiefs Council is what's responsible for publishing this particular guidance, right, in which they quite openly admit that ethnic minorities should be treated differently than white people. And we had Robert Jenrick there saying, you have to address this anti-white racism that exists. I watched an incredible interview. It's a bit too long for us to play, but I don't know if you saw it last night. Kathy Newman, she of the predictable left, interviewing Zia Yusuf, right? And I ended up putting out a tweet in which I said, white woman accuses brown man of racism against brown people when he tries to point out that there's racism against white people. And you find yourself in this kind of Alice in Wonderland world where everything's reversed and you're kind of looking in the mirror and seeing somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest. These people are not clever, Mike.
No.
So let's.
They think they're clever, though. They really think they're clever.
Well, they think they're clever because all they're doing is reciting the woke mantras, reciting the cult beliefs. They are cult followers of a really crummy religion, Mike. It's not a good religion. No. It hasn't achieved anything of any goodness. And those of us who I mean, Zia Yusuf, absolutely, I did watch it and I thought he was brilliant. I thought Nigel was brilliant when he pointed out that white lives matter and black lives matter. All those of us who just want to be equal, who want to be under the rule of law, who want to have fair rules known in advance that apply equally to all of us without fear or favor, who want all of our children to be safe in this country, we're going to have to come together. There is no other way around it now. These other people don't want this. They are together. They are a blob. And yes, they've marched through our institutions. And yes, they seem to have a disproportionate access to public money and all sorts of other ills that we could throw at them. At the end of the day, they are just not on our side. No. We are not ad idem with them. That means of the same mind. We do not think the way they think, if indeed what they think is thinking. I mean, whatever it is that they've succumbed to, it is not in our ken. It is outwith our ability to conceive. And we have to understand that these people, I doubt we can reconcile with them. And I don't know what the next phrase after that is, but I doubt we can reconcile with them, because they are the people who would happily let Henry Nowak die. They did that. All of them. This is not just the 2 or 3 police officers who were there. It's the entirety of the cult. It's everybody in DEI was standing over Henry Nowak and watching him die and didn't give a hoot about it.
No.
Didn't give a fig
And how about this from Shabana? And I refuse to call her Mahmoud, by the way, because that's what everybody else is now doing. It's a bit like calling Kiev. I don't do it. I'm going to speak about it later, because I'm going to have a meltdown about the pronunciation police.
I still call Twitter.
Yeah, well, exactly. Me too. But how about this, though? That she apparently, a source close to the Home Secretary, has told the Times, i.e. Shabana Mahmood has told the Times, because it's the Labour Party in-house newspaper, the NPCC is rightly reviewing the wording of this guidance to ensure there is no ambiguity, so everyone is equal in the eyes of the law. Hurrah! Right, so we've taken how many centuries to come from the Magna Carta to nobody being equal under the law? How the hell did that happen?
Well, part of it is the problem that there's guidance at all.
Yeah.
So a lot of the point, for those of us who are going to stand in opposition to this, and I hope it will be a great many of us, Mike, because I really want all of our kids to be safe, and they're not going to be safe if this cult is allowed to continue. No. So I think it is about time that we all stood together to root out the cult. Okay, the cult has to go. Yeah. Woke has to go. DEI has to go. And I would advise that guidance has to go. What is guidance? Why do we need guidance? We've had this with the trans issue. We had the Supreme Court waffle on, frankly. I'm not going to just pour praise on them, because frankly the amount of words they used to say a man is a man and a woman is a woman was itself ridiculous, apart from the fact that you had to go to the Supreme Court, which is also ridiculous. But the idea that you then need guidance from the EHR, or whatever, letter soups everywhere. Letter soups giving guidance everywhere. And that's all we do in our world, Mike. Just letter soups giving guidance, guidance that nobody reads. Right. So get rid of it. Get rid of it. Absolutely. All you need to know is that the rules apply to everybody. Law applies to everyone. That's it.
Yeah.
And when you move back, once you reject the cult and its words and its letter soups and its acronyms and its access to public money, you just realize we can live in a much simpler world.
Yes.
And it will be a better world.
Yes, it would be a better world.
Simpler world.
And perhaps we could even go back to the time when police officers, when they attend a scene, can quickly sum up what is going on, what has happened, who is the good guy, who is the bad guy. It might well be that they're both bad guys, but, what you don't do is go in with a preconceived notion of how it's going to play out, because you know that guy's bad because he's a racist, and this guy's good because he's been racially abused, even though you haven't checked out whether that's a made-up story. We've got police who don't police. We've got paramedics who don't paramedic. We've got politicians who don't do politics. We've got a sort of what they're starting to call them the lanyard class, aren't they? People who just wear lanyards and walk about because they've made some qualification in a sort of an educational higher learning institute, but they don't actually know how to do anything.
No, and they don't do anything. And actually, I think that is at the core of the cult's failing. Yeah. And every time you look at the cult, just look and notice it doesn't do the day job. It's like my railway company that was constantly sending out tweets about children reading books.
Yes.
Right. It's got nothing to do with you. You're a railway company.
You're railway.
You're supposed to run trains. By the way, you don't run trains. They're often late. The internet never works. I've had rain pouring through a train carriage. You're not doing the day job. Yeah. But instead, you're doing this other job that no one asked you to do. And we need to get back to the idea that people have to do their day job and that is a fundamental part of what they are supposed to do. So if you work for a train company, your job is to run the trains. If you're a police officer, your job is to police, not to engage in cult beliefs and cult ideologies about this, in this instance, fighting racism by letting an innocent young man die.
Right.
Whatever has gone on in your head is wrong. whatever has gone in your head is broken and it needs to stop. And we must absolutely, really, Mike, this must be a rallying cry to stop the cult. Go away, cult. They're trying it. There was like the tiniest of disturbances last night in Southampton. And so immediately they're trying to make that the focus of attention, rather than the fact that the state, the established state, the wokerati lanyard class allowed an innocent young man to bleed to death on the floor, having dragged him across the gravel. That matters. I don't really care.
Well, in
about
the same way,
alleged
in the same way,
yeah,
in the same way that they're trying to blame Nigel Farage yesterday for making what I thought was an incredibly important and very heartfelt speech about how enough is enough and we've got to stop this, what is plain to see, anti-white racism, which is going on in the country. You know, I was listening to a report the other day on the subject of the numbers of people who are in the top 1% of earners now in this country, and apparently anything over £220,000 a year puts you in the top 1%. And it was a fascinating study because I think it was done by the Attitude Survey or something like that. And they discovered that actually, proportionately, there were an awful lot more people in the top 1% of earners who were from ethnic minorities. Not because of any particular bias, but just because, you know, many particularly, Asian men and women from the Indian subcontinent do terribly well. They make a lot of money. But it was pointed out that, you know, the population, which is non-white in this country, is less than 5%. And yet we have all of these DEI instructions that we have to recognise people who are from non-white backgrounds, that we have to put them on adverts in television programs, that we have to, you know, somehow kowtow to this multiculturalism that we supposedly live in, when in fact most people don't live in it at all.
No, and
by the way, that's not a racist thing to say. It's simply the facts.
You shouldn't even have to say it, Mike. It's just ridiculous now.
Yeah.
Those of us who reject the cult are incredibly diverse.
Yeah.
You know, there are people of all ethnicities, all religions, all sexualities who just reject this pathetic cult because it's intellectually dead. It's going to destroy the country, and its greatest achievement is watching a young man bleed to death on the floor.
Yeah.
That is the greatest. What have you achieved, Fabian Marxism, in your 100-year march through the institutions? What have you truly achieved? Well, you've stopped planning. You haven't made us able to build any houses. And your greatest achievement is an 18-year-old young man bleeding to death on the floor whilst idiot bureaucrats, they're not police officers, they're just bureaucrats, stand there looking weak and pathetic. What a great achievement of your Fabian Marxist cult. What a utopia you have led us to, you weak and pathetic men. We just have to reject them. I want us all to stand together. The thing that they want, Mike, is for us to sort of carry on their identity politics rubbish. So you know, what should I do? Go like, no, I'm just not doing it. I'm just go away. Just go away. All decent people, please unite and stand with us against the cult. I'm decent. Anybody who's decent, I don't care what you look like. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what sexuality you are. Come and be a decent person and reject the Fabian Marxist cult that is currently running our country into the ground. That's where it's running it. And its greatest achievement, clap, clap, Shabana Mahmood, you know, clap, 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 clap. You achieved this. You got to achieve a young man bleeding to death on the floor. Clap, clap, Keir Starmer. You achieved this with your stupid hand gestures. You can take them and stick them where the sun don't shine, mate.
Absolutely right. Well said. Let's have a look at one of the great enemies, of course, of progress and of intelligence. And I don't mean Shabana Mahmood individually. However, have a look at what she said yesterday. This is number 5, Elena.
But let me say this on the question of preferential treatment more widely. The police in this country have a sacred duty to police without fear or favour. Everyone in this country is equal before the law. It is the promise upon which our whole justice system rests, and the equality of every citizen is the foundation on which the openness, tolerance, and generosity of this country rests. Let me also be clear about one other thing, a dangerous undercurrent that I have seen in the reaction to this awful crime. Threats against police officers are utterly unacceptable. There can be no justification for intimidation, abuse, or attempts to take the law into one's own hands. A police officer unrelated to this case has been misidentified online and subjected to death threats. He has been forced to relocate to protect himself and his family. Misinformation and inflammatory commentary is making a dreadful situation even worse. We must all, together, condemn it. And we must also allow the facts to be established through the appropriate investigations and the courts, and we must do so calmly and responsibly. The Nowak family and Henry's memory deserve answers. They have also called on us all to take action. Action to address the daily tragedy of knife crime in this country.
It took her a long time to get to the actual danger, which is the guy with the knife. She spent most of that telling us about the dangers of the way people react to the guy with the knife.
Well, Mike, what we have to do, and what I want all your viewers to realise, is that you just respond to that by going, you are being emotionally manipulative, and I'm not going to be manipulated.
Yeah.
Okay? At the absolute, at the core of things, she's just trying to emotionally manipulate you into supporting her and her stupid cult. But her stupid cult achieved this. Okay, it's they, and the Fabian Marxists who got us to where we are. I really didn't like the use of the term sacred duty on police officers. That is absolutely manipulative, just nonsense. They're not a religion, they're police officers, and the people are the police, and the police are the people. So again, when she said that she doesn't want people taking the law into their own hands, our law is in our hands.
Yes.
Our law has always been in our hands. Thank you very much, Shabana. Go and pootle off to your little cult. My law is still in my hands. This is our country. Right? It belongs to us, this idea of a professional police force. Do you know who invented that? Oh, yes, we did. And do you know why we did it? Because it would help the people. We did not do it in order to control the people or oppress the people. They are not a Stasi. They are not a military force. They're not a quasi-religious force or whatever the hell she was painting them out in her great emotionally manipulative nonsense that she splurged out there. Just complete gibberish. Reject Shabana Mahmood. Reject everything that she says. Reject the cult. Regain our country. This has always been our country. It's always been our law. And we will, and this is the one thing I truly love about this place, Mike, we will always behave with absolute decency. And we will rip out this cult. Rip this cult out of our system. It somehow got embedded. I honestly think, Mike, what happened is that basically it's been going on for a very long time, certainly since the Second World War, probably before, but at quite a slow pace. And then in the mid-90s, everybody was just making so much money and enjoying being in the private sector that we basically just ignored the public sector and just let it get on with stuff, whilst they quietly stole it all. And they, there's been a long march through the institutions. Nobody can deny that. Fabian Marxism is in control of everything. It's doing two things. It's creating a country in which innocent young men bleed to death on the gravel in the most heartless way because it's evil. But it's also really draining public money. And that's the second one I think hasn't been noticed yet. I don't know if you engage with Charlotte Gill at all, but I think her work is phenomenal on all
tremendous.
This.
Yeah.
The cult is draining our cash. Why is your road full of potholes? Why do you only have a fortnightly bin collection? Why can't you see a GP when we are an incredibly wealthy nation? The reason is the cult is stealing your money. It's not just patronizing and emotionally manipulative. It's not just heartless and destructive. It's not just leaving young men to bleed to death on cold gravel and dragging them across it. It's draining all your cash.
It really is. I've got a theory, and I've been espousing it for a while, long before it got as bad as this, which is that Tony Blair, when he came into power in 1997, not only had a plan to completely reconstruct Britain and completely change the way that it was run, but he also made it so boring in politics that people switched off, right? And people just kind of abandoned them to their own devices because they just went, you know what? It's so dull and these people are so awful that we're just going to disengage and we let them get on with it. And this is now the result.
The key word there, and it's genius, Mike, because I've just been thinking along this line, boring. They have weaponized boring. So when they say about the NPCC and the blah 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 and the blah 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 blah, and then it produces guidance which runs to extra hundreds of pages, or even the Supreme Court, to be perfectly honest, producing hundreds of pages when it just needed. What is a man and what is a woman? And you're supposed to be the best and most intelligent judges we have. Really, can you not do this in a one-liner? Because I'm pretty sure I can do this in a one-liner.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, they are drowning us in words and they are weaponizing boring.
Yes.
And we have to somehow get it all back, because we're going to have to. We need to rip out this wiring. We are Gulliver in Lilliput. If people remember the Gulliver's Travels,
yes,
a big, strong, powerful man, but these tiny little Lilliputians, these tiny little monsters, they tie him up in lots of little, tiny little ropes. And any individual rope he could break, but they tie him up in so many that he can't move. That's what we are, Gulliver in Lilliput.
Yes.
And they have weaponized boring against us. And I'm afraid, Mike, that means we're going to have to get somebody down in the detail, ripping all this out.
Yeah. Setting fire to it, a literary bonfire of the vanities, or a bonfire of the inanities, you might call it. Because the other thing, of course, which is a great example of this, just to move away from the Henry Nowak story, is this nonsense about the Mandelson papers. Here's 1 million pages, most of which are covered in Tipp-Ex, so you can't actually see them. But we're giving you something, so you should be grateful. And you go, well, hang on a minute, there's nothing in there. I've just opened the Pandora's box, and it's empty. So where's the things that we want? Oh, we haven't got those. Well, why haven't you? Oh, well, they've disappeared. I mean, I put a tweet out yesterday when somebody said, Keir Starmer's admitted that he uses disappearing messages. And I just said, what a pity we don't have a disappearing Prime Minister, because that would be great if you could just make him suddenly vanish and we could start all over again.
That would be preferable. The use of disappearing messages, Mike, just so you know, is a breach of the ministerial code.
Yes.
I put out a tweet yesterday just highlighting there's 2 sets of guidance, not one set of completely useless words, 2 sets of completely useless words that govern the use of WhatsApp on ministers' phones, and he's in breach of both of them. And it's just another one where what they've done is they've created so many rules that they can just bore you into ignoring the rules and then get whatever outcome they want. So they can claim that Nigel Farage has done something outrageous in breach of some obscure rule you've never heard of, and that's a terribly important thing, allegedly, because they tell you it is. But them breaching the obscure rule you've never heard of doesn't matter at all. And that's what they're doing. They want to get these 2-tier outcomes. It's absolutely baked in. The one thing that seriously irritates me, Mike, is when yesterday he said that there's no 2-tier. There is obviously 2-tier.
Yeah.
We know this. And I think we in this country have our greatest strength is the ability to call out the B word. Okay. And I think we are going to all need to come together, be as diverse as you want, come from any background you want, as long as you're committed to Britain, come and join me, come join us and rebel against these cult monsters, because all they have done is destroy our country, steal our money, and leave our young people bleeding to death on cold gravel.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, even and the argument they came out with yesterday, Mike. Sorry, just to do that. I really want to do this one. The argument that he was going to die anyway, so it's fine. It's like, no, if he's going to die anyway, then do you know what I do? I know what you do. You're a dad. You've got a son. I know exactly what you do. You hug him. That's what you do. You don't put on stupid gloves and handcuff him. You hug him. If he's dying and there is genuinely no way to save him, and I'm not actually accepting that, because that seems like a very flippant thing to say, given that he died anyway. But, and the criminal, just so you know how criminal trials work, they didn't actually look into that in any detail, because it's not really relevant to them. So I'd want a civil court to look at the evidence on that. Thank you very much. Not a criminal court. I don't really trust them. But even if he were destined to die and there was nothing that could be done, then in those last moments, you hug him and you cradle his head and you hold his hand and you make him feel better. You don't drag him across cold gravel upside down. You just don't do that.
Of course not. It's been brilliant this morning. We've got some super chats to play to you or to read to you. Let's have a look at some of them. One from Lou. Would Stephen stand for Parliament? You don't have to answer. I think you'd be wasted in there, to be honest, because you'd be like Gulliver, wouldn't you? They'd just be tying you down all the time. Belfast boys. Stephen is right. Government police, the whole lot, are a pack of cults with an N. Yeah, well, you can say that. I couldn't possibly. Jane, I'm looking back in anger. Yeah, I mean, all of this nonsense where, the lefties yesterday were telling us not to be angry. How dare they tell us not to be angry? If I want to be bloody angry, and I am, I will be. Thanks very much indeed. I don't need to be told that that's going to make everything worse and that as a result of me, saying things, people are going to start rioting in the streets. They're not. And if they do start rioting in the streets, it'll be because they're bloody angry as well.
Well, Kathy Newman tried that trick on Zia Yusuf yesterday. She was like, isn't he inciting people to be angry?
Yes.
That was the first one. And then the next one, isn't that incitement? And it's like, right, what you're doing there is you're implying that when you say, isn't that incitement, normal people would think, isn't that the crime of incitement? Rather than the purely human reaction of the incitement to anger. Incitement to anger is not a crime, Mike. Lots of plays and all sorts of art forms incite us to anger. Some of them incite us to love. I get incited to tears quite often because I'm a crier, and I see a sad moment on the telly or in a film, and I'll cry. That's incitement. It's not unlawful incitement, but the eliding of the two, the way that they switch around between these things, it just all has to go. These are just cult members, and this is a crappy little cult. That the absolute takeaway of the Fabians, Mike, is not that there's some sinister geniuses. It's that this is just absolutely rubbish. At their utopia involves young men bleeding to death in the cold on cold gravel, being prodded and poked at by heartless bureaucrats. What a gorgeous utopia you have created, you sinister, evil, little, tiny people.
Yeah, I couldn't possibly have put it better myself. Brilliant this morning, Stephen. Thank you so much. You've incited me into doing something about it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something because, we need to. We absolutely need to get it all back. Stephen Barrett, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Great to see you. What a guy. What a fantastic speech. What a fantastic point of view that he's got. Peter Barnes is here. We're going to be talking to him coming up very shortly. We've got a poll, by the way, which is going on out there. I'm not quite sure what inspired this poll. I can't remember because it was such a long time ago. It was Torval and Dean, that's right. They've been given some kind of knighthoods recognition. So I was saying, why don't we do who would you nominate for a knighthood? But instead I was overruled. And instead we've got the funniest double act, right? Which I haven't seen yet. Reeves and Lammy, that's 50%. I like that. Ant and Deck, 1%. It's bad news for ITV. The two who put them in there? That's outrageous. I didn't sanction that. The two mics, 12%. I mean, it's one thing to put them in there. They're not even going to win it, which is terrible. And Eric and Ernie, 36%. So, that's a Perry effect. Yeah, it's absolutely right. So Reeves and Lammy, currently the best double acts that anybody's ever seen in comedic land. Let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, all. I'm Edward Hughes. In today's episode of Britain Still Functioning Somehow, police are once again starring in their own horror show. An 18-year-old student, Henry Nowak, gets stabbed by a bloke who then claims racism as a get-out-of-jail-free card. Our brave officers, bless their diversity-trained hearts, slap handcuffs on the dying lad while he's bleeding out and gasping he can't breathe. Bodycam gold dropped. PM Starmer mutters, serious questions. Protests turn messy with missiles flying, and everyone screams two-tier policing again. Who could have predicted treating a racism accusation like Holy Writ might go wrong? Meanwhile, your energy bills are about to soar another £221 because of course they are. A fishing boat sank off Northern Ireland. One rescued, one still playing hide and seek. And somewhere in the background, politicians are still pretending they're in control. That's your news. Later's Tigers.
Yeah, he's starting to sound a bit weird again, old Edward Hughes. He was doing well this week, I thought. Suddenly now he's talking about politicians making sense. Well, I haven't seen one that made any sense. Not yesterday, not this week. They're all running around desperately trying to outdo each other by being more and more reasonable and being much, much more careful about how they talk about the police. And of course they can't follow possibly Nigel Farage and that nasty speech he made yesterday about anti-white racism. They can't be doing that. Let's talk to Peter Barnes, who's here, former government advisor. Peter, good to see you.
Nice to see you. How
Welcome
you doing?
back to the Mike
Thank
Graham
you for
Show.
having me.
I mean, obviously, Stephen Barrett has kind of set the stall out there as his version of this terrible
correct
cult.
version.
Yes, this terrible cult in which we are living, which was I mean, it was almost embarrassing yesterday watching the way that people reacted, not so much to the stabbing death and the court case and the murder conviction, but to Nigel Farage,
Yes.
for heaven's sake, saying things that we can't possibly say.
Oh, you're so right with the Kathy Newman comment. I was
Yeah.
like, that woman lost her mind over it. It was
I know.
absolutely hilarious. Though, to be fair, she got... her career basically fell apart after Jordan Peterson and the Lobster.
She's never
incident.
really
She's
recovered
never
from that,
recovered
no.
from the Lobster.
No,
But,
of course you can tell how bad she is because now she's been hired by Sky News.
Well, that says everything, doesn't it?
So you finally reached the end of your career when you get a show on Sky.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of here's a watch. Yeah, but no, you're so right. But because I always say it's the be kind or else.
Yes.
There is the or else
Yes.
bit that these people will come after you. They will try and cancel you and shut you down and
Yeah.
do all this kind of stuff because you have the audacity to say, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
That is the most insidious bit. And what I find really, really dangerous, what we've got in our society now, is we self-censor. We're scared to say this
Yes.
stuff. Look at the Axel Ruder-Cabana case. Look at the Salman Abedi one. Both of those instances could have been prevented if somebody was brave enough to say, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But,
and one of the things that I found really fascinating yesterday was the number of people running around, from James O'Brien to Sheila Fogarty,
Does he
to
run?
all of these characters. Well, he probably should. All these characters on the left who are kind of desperately trying to say things like, well, you shouldn't blame the whole Sikh population. Nobody did.
Yeah.
Not one person said that the Sikh population was to blame. The Sikh population, actually, for many people in this country, is one of the most patriotic British
without a
populations,
doubt.
as a minority than you've ever seen. Everybody knows that the Sikhs made up a huge part of the army during the Second World War and all of that. So one, nobody was saying it in the first place. But two, why can't you say that, it's not about blaming Sikhs, but you can also ask the question, who has the right to carry a bleeding dagger around on the basis of some medieval kind of, law from hundreds of years ago that say you must be able to have a ceremonial dagger on you?
Yeah.
Why can't we just outlaw it? Which is what Nigel Farage has been saying, what Reform have been saying. Well, why can't we?
I know, it's ridiculous. I don't understand how anybody should be able to carry a knife and, it should be, whether you can, brandish it and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter if it's modified or anything. If you have a blade, you shouldn't have it in prison. Go away.
Exactly.
Big dark hole, throw you in it, see you later.
I don't care if you've got some, odd religious reason for carrying it around. I mean, we're not living, you don't have to kill a goat that's
How
coming
many
at you,
more
or a buffalo
dead
or
children do we have to have before common sense enters the room again?
Exactly
because
right.
I agree with you. Yesterday, I actually thought was not a great day for British politics. Too many people dancing on Henry's grave, in my opinion, using him as a weapon on both sides of the argument. I thought it was a very dark day, actually.
Yeah.
Because, again, we weren't having the conversation we should be having because we're not allowed to have that conversation because of people like James O'Brien who have to bring up an imagined narrative because they don't want to admit that they caused this, in my opinion. This is a blood on their hands situation. They will never, ever want to turn this around. This is why they don't want to stop the migrant crisis. Because it's admitting they were wrong.
Yes.
It's why they don't want to do anything to do with the trans stuff. It's admitting they mutilated children.
Yes.
There is a big, long list. I've just got a few here of people that were sacrificed through diversity. It's people like Sir David Amos, Joe Cox, the Batley Grammar School teacher that was thrown under the bus.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
He was
yesterday
one.
we had Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary of this nation, saying that a police officer was wrongly identified yesterday as being the guy who actually put the handcuffs on Henry Nowak, and he's had to go into hiding. Well, nobody ever mentions the Batley Grammar School teacher who's been in hiding for how many years? 3 years now? 4?
I think it's a little bit more than that, but again, the Conservatives completely failed to protect him. The Labour Party weaponised him to win a by-election. I thought that was terrible. You had white working class boys left behind, demonised in a Netflix series, and then they've been left to rot.
Yeah, but keep giving them awards though, because it's such a brilliant show, right?
Oh
Every
yeah,
time they
definitely. And you have to watch it because if you haven't watched it, you don't understand misogyny. Apparently, I thought that was ridiculous. We put kids
I haven't
on,
watched it, by the way. I refuse to watch it.
When people tell me to watch
Not
something,
interested.
I don't watch it.
Exactly.
I look at Tom Roberts. This was a guy who wanted to join the army. He was killed by an asylum seeker who faked being a child. Stabbed him on the beach.
Incredible.
This guy wanted to join the army. He got the rape guns of Rhiannon Sky White. She worked in a hotel. She was killed, again, just wanting to help. Loads. I've got loads
Well,
and
the
loads
list
and loads.
goes on
and
and
they
on
are
and on.
sacrifices. Henry wasn't murdered, he was sacrificed. He was an acceptable loss to these people because we can't mess the voter base up. That's a big one. But also, again, it's that they've got blood on their hands. The Axel Ruder-Cabana one. Southport is still broken. It's still broken. When sending your kids to a dance class becomes an act of bravery, You have to say something has gone wrong.
Yeah.
You have to admit it.
I mean, you didn't mention there the Nottingham killings as well.
Yes.
Badenoch the man who was allowed to walk the streets of Nottingham because they were frightened of looking racist by locking him up because they decided, unfortunately, we've locked up too many black men for being mad, schizophrenic murderers, right?
Yeah.
So we'll just let a few of them out because then the numbers will look better.
Didn't one of the victims get the bravery? If I remember rightly, there was one of the girls she got given because she protected somebody. And I remember in the Southport case, one of the sisters protected her as she got stabbed over 40 times, if I remember, by what is frankly a pathetic monster. But again, we pumped kids full of all sorts of drugs just because they, dared to be kids, and we just don't protect the most vulnerable because they're just cannon fodder for people with a bigger ideological war. They don't want to win it; they just want to beat the other side continually, and it's pathetic.
And of course, isn't it funny when it suddenly gets turned around on them? When you finally get the kind of interesting policies that Reform came out with a couple of weeks ago, when they said, "All right, I'll tell you what. If you vote Green, we're going to put a load of asylum seekers and migrants, illegal migrants, into your communities because obviously that's what you want." And they all went, "Well, why would you punish us?" And you go, "Hang on a minute. I thought you said these people were all really, really kind and good and coming here to do great jobs. And how would you see it as punishment?
Well, I thought they were all doctors and nurses and engineers, and they were all going to save the country.
That's when they showed themselves.
Oh, definitely.
The sheep's clothing disappeared and the fangs came out, and you suddenly went, "Oh, you're a wolf after all."
I always thought the mask slipped, whether it was the woman in the Question Time audience, and she said, "Well, who's going to serve in my pret?"
Yeah, exactly.
That showed you the arrogance and how they actually think about people. The mask slipped very, very badly on that one, and it's the bigoted woman with Gordon Brown. Again, it's just how they think about anybody that has the audacity to challenge them. I look at how fragile Starmer is, and Jeremy Corbyn had it as well. The minute you dare question their moral integrity, they freak out like you've never seen. You remember his hand shaking at the lectern.
Oh yeah,
it's like, how dare you question him?
We've got a whole bunch of clips that we haven't played yet, so let's play another one here. This is Keir Starmer condemning Nigel Farage yesterday, number 2.
I think Nigel Farage's reaction is the wrong reaction. And I start my answer to your question through the eyes of the family. They have said they do not want this whipped up. They have been through the most extraordinary, awful experience. They don't want this whipped up. And Nigel Farage is completely wrong to use this to try and create division. He would be wrong in any circumstances. But when Henry's family are saying, please don't do that, it's our son, then really, as politicians, as human beings, we should start where they start. And that's where I start. And a
Yeah, so the retrospective Starmer alert there from Elena. She's gonna learn soon to put it out before we play Starmer, just
like
so
a
that
health
we're warned
warning
ahead of time. But yeah. Thankfully, it's great though to have another pair of hands here. So Pooch is looking a lot happier. He's looking, in fact, a bit too relaxed.
Yeah, he was relaxing on the sofa before.
Go do some work. He's building a new studio though, so there's a lot going on. We'll tell you more about that coming up. But this is the thing, isn't it? Starmer there, and this is what I really detest about these politicians, and particularly these virtue signalling politicians. They say this is not what the family would want. Well, hang on a minute. You've basically taken one statement from the family, which was an incredibly, powerful statement made by Mark Nowak, Henry's father. He did not say, I don't want people to talk about this. He did not say, I don't wish for people to debate what's going on here. Yes, he said, I don't want people to cause more division. But that's not what Nigel Farage was doing.
No.
Nigel Farage was simply pointing out that we are where we are as a result of the things you've been saying, that this whole situation has been created by the leftists and the cultists and these kind of virtue signalling morons.
I actually think it's the entire British establishment that is responsible for this, because every politician has the job of keeping people safe. It's not just the government's job, it's politicians in the House of Commons. And in the House of Lords and the judiciary. Let's look at that poor girl. We can't name her, obviously, because she's underage, but, the judge didn't want to criminalise the... Like, she was a sacrifice.
Right.
And yet, we're just supposed to say, You can't look the other way.
I think in many ways the judiciary is the worst of the lot because it seems to have been completely captured by the left. You know? Do you remember all those cases when Just Stop Oil were a thing, and they'd be charged, they'd be incarcerated, they'd be put up before the Beak, Bow Street magistrates or whatever, and suddenly they would be found guilty, but they'd give them no punishment on the basis that what they were doing was a good thing. They're saving the planet. It doesn't matter that they were causing criminal damage, or it doesn't matter that they were spraying buildings orange or with blood or fake whatever. You know, they're good people, so let's not punish them.
Oh, well, let's not forget this is the same kind of body, like the police, that's thought that from the river to the sea needed context. You know, we had a literal Nazi flag down Whitehall just before Remembrance Sunday. And Sir Mark Riley said, oh, well, it's a debatable issue.
Right.
In what world is it the Nazi flag?
Do you remember the Hamas and the ISIS flags and the calls for jihad? And the police were bending over backwards saying, oh, no, it's just a religious flag. And also jihad can be about just being a good Muslim. It's like, that's not your job. Go and arrest these
That was always the thing the police got.
Nearly.
That's what the police got massively wrong. They thought their job was to protect the right to protest. Incorrect. Their job, I learned this from Stephen actually, their job is to police the king's peace.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
Everything else is not their thing.
I thought that was Camilla's job, but that's
she's a busy woman. She's hung on in there. Yeah. I always say that she's hung on in there.
We're suddenly being censored now on the show. No, see, this is why you need to do more. You know, you need to do sitting there like
idle
some
hands.
Kind of ombudsman now. You know, chief ombudsman of the show. But let's look at the other thing about being bored into submission is this whole Mandelson files thing, right? Piece on the front page of the Times today. Starmer's messages with Mandelson could be permanently lost. We just heard Stephen Barrett there saying that the fact that they're using disappearing messages is actually a breach of the ministerial code, not once but twice. And there's a piece, I think, on the front of the Telegraph today in which it says vanishing messages are being used not just by Keir Starmer but also by Rachel Reeves and also by David Lammy.
Yeah, they were used by Nicola Sturgeon,
also good
Boris
at making
Johnson.
food disappear.
Oh yeah, But they were used by all. They're used by all politicians because again they disappear.
Yeah, but hang on,
they should not be allowed.
Inside the machine,
right?
Unfortunately,
no,
probably
at
before,
35 and look like this.
Yes, you covered well. But given, I suppose, the time, I don't know whether in the time that you did it, whether WhatsApp was a thing.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that WhatsApp, and people have said this many times now over the past couple of weeks, should not be used as a means of communication because it's not checkable, it is not recordable, if you like, and it's certainly not something that can go into an archive so that you can see what people were talking about.
The way they get around it is they use their private phones to do it.
Right.
So they'll never use the actual government one, which has to be archived and all the rest of it. They use the private one.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I thought COVID, after that, I thought, do you know what? Let's ban ministers from using WhatsApp. Most ministers don't even know how to use a phone to begin with.
Right.
That's part of the problem. That's why we've got
They
AI.
keep getting them stolen as well. They're very bad at holding on to them, aren't they?
And then forgetting where they are, and then forgetting to tell the people, this might have the Prime Minister's number on it. Yeah, that might seem important, but
this is the thing, they're treating us like we're idiots, and we're supposed to believe them when they come out and say, oh, I had my phone stolen, or oh, actually, I deleted all those messages. Oh, well, I can't remember what I said. We're literally being gaslit every single second now by these people.
I always go back to what Andrew Neil said. He's been around for donkey's years, and he always said, this is the government that is the most comfortable with lying to the public.
Yes.
And for him to say that, I always thought was quite a profound thing. But, again, when you've got politicians that will literally just say anything to get through the day, because that's what they are at the minute. They're getting through the minute. That's it.
I mean, I sometimes sit here and imagine what it must be like to be Keir Starmer, waking up in the morning, wondering what the day is going to hold.
Oh, I think he's like Walter Mitty. It just happens around him.
I mean, yesterday, for example, he was called by the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, to come and make a statement. He sent Shabana Mahmood, which was just about okay because she's the Home Secretary, but he should have really done it. And he then addressed the sort of the press a bit later on, which we just saw him doing there, talking about Nigel Farage. But, he must wake up in the morning and think, what's going to come at me today? Because he's got no business of actual government to do because they're sort of paralysed, aren't they? They're sort of rabbit in the headlights.
Does anybody remember they're supposed to be running the country? We've got this by-election, we've got this, we've got everything else going on. They're supposed to be in charge. We don't have an economy, nobody's got a job and all the rest of it.
I mean, the most
no one's buying a house and all this kind of stuff.
The most ridiculous story I saw this week was Rachel Reeves on the front of the Telegraph saying she's thinking of going to the PFI well to build some new houses.
And I was like,
and you just think, hang on. we're still paying off the last PFI experiment under Tony Blair, where they built a load of hospitals that we apparently now have to rent back from the people that built them, having paid them to build them. We don't even own them.
Oh, yeah, because I always thought, I was like, how strong was the wine I was drinking the night before when I read that article? Because I was like, did I travel back in time? Is it Groundhog Day?
I know.
But this is how desperate they are. They have brought Gordon Brown back, but this is the desperation. It's like when the Tories brought back David Cameron.
Yeah.
They know the party's about to collapse, so they bring in the names most people will recognise and the hopes people will spare them.
But
basically.
that was one of the funniest things, one of the funniest developments, I think, of the Mandelson papers, when it turns out that Gordon Brown has been, from the very beginning, agitating to get rid of Keir Starmer, using Angela Rayner as a battering ram, which is an interesting image.
There's an
But, he then decides that when everything's gone wrong and the wheels have all come off, let's bring Gordon Brown back into government. I'm still not sure what he's been doing, Gordon Brown, since he's been brought back into government. Not very much, it seems to me.
I think it's going to have something to do with the international side of stuff. So it's like with the EU and the IMFs, because he saved the world, if you remember correctly.
Sold all the gold off.
Sold all the gold off, and basically decimated the economy, and basically brought in the kind of transactional nature of voting as well. That's why you get voter bases and cheap policies.
Yeah,
it's actually ridiculous. The damage that man did is actually probably worse than Blair, actually. In my
definitely,
opinion.
Yeah. By all means, definitely worse also than all of the Black Fridays and Black Mondays under the Tories. He created. I mean, he would say that he controlled the banking collapse, but he didn't actually. Because all he did was he rescued banks that shouldn't have been rescued. And we're still paying the price of that. But again, let's go back to another liar, congenitally, and that would be Andy Burnham,
that guy.
whose latest U-turn is to put out there that he was going to have a snap election. Now, apparently, he's not going to have a snap election if he wins. And I'm told, I don't know what you're hearing about the polls up there, that he's not a shoo-in by any means. He may not actually win.
No, he was never a shoo-in. It's my hometown.
Is it?
Yeah, it's my home constituency.
Everybody claims that. I think I'm going to start claiming it. I grew up in Makerfield. I love Makerfield. That's where I'm standing there.
Do I sound like that?
Sorry. The greatest thing, though, I know I got roundly criticised as an elitist by Dan Wootton because I put a voice on to make fun of the Restore Britain candidate.
Oh, right,
when she said that she couldn't remember why she got into politics.
But I don't think I'd even know at the end of the day.
No.
Yeah.
I see tonight there's a Question Time special, which I won't be watching.
Oh, this is terrible,
which has got all the Makenfield candidates, but it hasn't got the Restore Britain one, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming they'll complain about that.
Oh, yeah, I think Rupert Lowe's already said he's consulting the lawyers this morning, and I actually think he's got a point on this. You either have everybody or you don't do it. I think that's the only fair thing.
Yeah,
but
you can't really exclude one or two people, do you?
Particularly ones that, I think they're polling, third, fourth, something like that?
If they had the Monster Raving Loony Party on there, you'd watch it.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't you?
100%. And I always said that, look at what the Question Time did to Nick Griffin and the BNP.
Yeah.
Decimated them.
Yeah, exactly.
Put them in the spotlight, put them under some pressure. They crumbled every time.
The Reform candidate's going to be there, Kenyon, which might be a bit of a gamble too far for them because I wouldn't say he's the most robust candidate they've ever had either.
No, this is somewhat of a race to the bottom. I'm not going to lie on this one, I have to admit.
But I mean, interesting what you say about the polling, because I can't make any sense of the polling, to be honest, because the poll they keep quoting is that Times poll, which is a tiny, tiny sample of about 700 people or something. Which I've always been told by pollsters, anything under 2,000, you don't take any notice of it. And then you've got Restore themselves saying that they think, from their canvassing, that they're running at 25 to 30%, which I also don't believe.
I don't believe that.
So I don't quite know where it all is.
I look at how parties react.
Yeah.
So they'll have all their internal stuff that they'll never release, but look how parties react. And I think Reform have rather thrown baby out with bathwater and have really gone on the attack, rightly or wrong. So that always says to me, something's not quite right here. This should have been a cakewalk for Reform. 75th plus Brexit seat of the country, went 50% of the locals went straight to Reform, 24 out of 25 seats. This should have been a cakewalk, Andy Burnham or not. It's not.
Yes.
So why isn't it?
Right.
And they're going to blame...
Well, I mean, there's certainly true that Burnham is a better bet for Labour than whoever else they would have put in there. So
I think they also
that's given them, say, 10%, right?
Andy Burnham's not that liked in that constituency. It's one of those places where it's not really Manchester. It would feel no effect of Andy Burnham. They rather like the fact that Andy Burnham is in Manchester and not in Makerfield. Right. Yeah, it's one of those things. But also, I always find...
Is it a bit like... I'm going to sound terribly southern here. Yeah. But is it a bit like sort of... being somewhere like Surrey rather than being in London?
Yes.
Is it a bit like that?
Yeah, so basically,
it's not a
put
poor
it this
place,
way,
is it?
people, it's been Greater Manchester since 1983. People still put Lancashire on the postcode.
Yeah, okay.
It's that kind of place where that's the identity.
They don't want to be associated with Manchester.
We always say walls keep people in and out.
Yes, quite right, absolutely. So what's your bet then, if you were a betting man?
At the moment, I'm still going reform, but by a little. Realistically, I think Andy Burnham has to win by about 8 points because he can't win on a very small majority because the next Prime Minister can't lose his seat.
Yes.
That's the big problem. That's why I've always said Angela Rayner is out. That's why Bridget Phillipson is out. Why Wes Streeting doesn't stand any chance. He's got like 6 majority. Like, you know, it's rather ridiculous that this is the place where the top echelons of the Labour Party. Keir Starmer, ironically, one of the safer ones.
Yes.
Convenient. But yeah, I'm saying reform at the moment, but again, they are somehow, clutching victory out of the jaws of defeat.
And do you think the whole Henry Nowak story will become part of that election process now, because it's such a big story, and it is it is kind of, I sometimes think of elections in sort of silos, if you like, and sometimes one story can completely change everything, and this story really has absolutely taken off and become massive. When you see it's on the front page of the Sun and the Daily Mail, and I know that papers are more and more irrelevant as time goes on, but when it's this big, somehow people will vote according to what they think of what's happened.
Definitely. What I will say with this one, though, is I was always really surprised by the reaction to this. Because I thought this was pretty obvious this was going to happen one time. I just wonder if this is a kind of, we were just somehow proven correct in our view. So whether it's actually going to make a huge amount of difference, I don't know. But it might just cement people in their positions, if you know what I mean. Right. But in that constituency, it is a lot more kind to do with the immigration issue, definitely public services, and cost of living more than most. Crime is a big one, so that might affect it quite a lot. But it's such a weird by-election, probably the most important by-election we've ever had, realistically. Because if Reform lose, that's a big problem, because then the inevitability of Nigel Farage disappears. Andy Burnham wins, we could have a new Prime Minister, we might not, who knows. And then,
but then the national polling still shows Reform on the rise as opposed to on the wane. I mean, it doesn't show Labour winning anything more if Andy Burnham suddenly wins Makerfield.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I will say that Reform's actual MMRP polls, so the ones that whether they get a majority, has gone backwards, not forwards. They're further away from a majority than they were 10 months ago. They spent £5 million at the locals, went backwards in vote share. So the nation is so
But also
fractured.
gained an awful lot more councils.
So are they now the Lib Dems? You can take out the bins, but you're not getting national security because they're a brand new party. Are the country really going to give a brand new party the keys to everything at this time? We don't. It might be better than WNO. It might be 1992 again. And the Tories sneak on in because Lord Ashcroft had them as the largest party. So it is literally all over the place. But that's because I think everything is collapsing all at once. The economy doesn't exist, and everybody is feeling the tension everywhere. Where you saw these riots, and obviously the stupid and terrible. But again, the anger is there. You can't deny the anger. They tried to do this with Southport.
You can't do it.
You can't do it.
There's a reason people take to the streets. It's because they've had enough. And they don't know what else to do.
And they feel that the legal avenues, the way you're supposed to do it, doesn't work. They're not being listened to. So why would you continue to go down the path that you know doesn't work?
Yeah, exactly. And just one final one for you, because this will be for James Murray, the new boss of the NHS.
Yes.
Again, I mean,
another sacrificial
I feel
lamb.
like the seer of everything these days, because I've been saying this for a long time. One of the biggest problems the NHS has got is there's so many people off sick all the time.
Ironic,
and
isn't
that's
it?
why it is ironic. Because you think, you work in a hospital. What is wrong with you? Sickness levels among NHS staff are 3 times as high as the rate for average private sector workers. Absences were also nearly twice as frequent as the overall public sector rate. So they're double the public sector, 3 times the private sector, and and there are many people, and this started during COVID. Many people off on the long-term sick. So hospitals are constantly looking for staff, constantly having to bring more people in, because they allow this kind of thing to go on.
Yeah, and they're also looking for their own staff because they're usually on a picket line up front.
Well, there is that. We've got new doctor strikes coming, I think, soon. We're around the corner.
I think this is the 6th or 7th one now. At what point do we say they're not allowed to strike? You can have a National Health Service or the right to strike.
Yes.
Can't have both.
You can't have both, exactly right.
Because we don't let, lots of other things stop striking.
How many more pay rises can you take? They're already up, their pay's
The great
gone up.
irony is, because of the pay rise amount, this is increased inflation. So actually, they've taken a pay cut, if you think about it, because everything's gone up in price. Also, why are we giving pay rises to people who weren't even at medical school?
Well, exactly.
That's the bit I will never understand.
It's not there. And also, if and you can say to people, well, in that case, if inflation goes down, then presumably you give us some of the money back.
That's never
We'd
love that. But there's a great one just on the NHS. It's actually in Scotland. it's the highest level of people going to private.
Yes.
And for the first time ever, has outweighed the number of people going to the NHS.
That's interesting, yeah. And I mean, I know that for a fact because I had to get something done privately, and the hospital I went to was so busy that it was full of people who had either been sent there by the NHS or people who had just been so fed up waiting that they decided to somehow collect enough money to go and get it done under their own steam. So it's a shocking state of affairs. Peter, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Some very interesting lines there from Peter Barnes on what's going to happen in Makerfield. We'll be talking about that, of course, throughout the course of the show today. Also, we'll be talking about why British women are apparently the angriest in Europe. It's nothing to do with me, by the way. Nothing to do with that at all. How lifting weights will stop early death. And how Joe Biden, according to Mrs. Joe Biden, apparently used to get up 7 times a night when he was in the White House because he was not a very well man. But nobody told her that he wasn't very well, apparently. And she didn't really have any idea. Isn't it extraordinary? Jill Biden, you know, Dr. Jill Biden,
I was just
by
about
the
to say
way.
Dr. Jill
Dr.
Biden.
Jill Biden.
Lady Macbeth.
Lady Macbeth. Let's get some news headlines with Edward Hughes, shall we?
Give me 1 second. Edward is just...
What's he doing now?
He's just messing
He's not
around
sending
a bit.
pictures to anyone, is he?
I think he might be.
Hey? Come on, Edward.
Mike, can we do... Let's play a bit of the live show. We're just going to play a bit of this live
Oh,
show.
right, okay. Karen, go for it.
Go.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I can't have one now is because I was still pissed when I got to the show this morning, thanks to this man. Look at him, he's nodding.
I've got one thing to say to that.
You see, he's not allowed to swear, but his jacket swears for him. Very good. So Donald said, I'm coming down on Tuesday. I'm like, oh, God. Why? By the way, I've got a nice little cushion here, which we're going to be throwing into the audience later.
I wiped my arse on that.
It was actually sent in. He's got blood on his hands, you know. We're sorry that Keir Starmer can't be here tonight. I've had him put on a helicopter and airlifted to that frozen, terrible, rat-infested ship. He thinks he's going to the Chagos Islands, but he's actually going to be landing on HB Vulnius, whatever it's called.
The dragon.
That's it, yeah. Anyway, so Donald comes down. I said, look, I'm going to be home by 8 o'clock. That's all I'm going to be doing. And he calls me and he's like, I'm in the bar already, it's 5 o'clock. And I went, fine. We walked into the restaurant at 7:45. So we weren't home by 8 o'clock, were we? Yeah. Anyway, listen, I want to thank you all for being here. I also celebrated the fact that just before I came on stage, we went through 19 million views on YouTube. And Donald, who has been my friend for many a year, did save me, did rescue me, along with Pooch. They both took one look at me back in November. Thank you, guys. Please give them a round of applause. Because I don't know what I would have been doing if they hadn't set me up with a new studio and a new show, you know. I might have had to open a pub, yeah, exactly.
He just wasn't allowed back to my house.
But then they said, we've got this great idea for a show. I said, what is it? They said, it's Mike Graham and Friends. And I went, I haven't got any friends. They've all stopped calling me. Some of them have started calling me names. But anyway, we managed to find some friends, and so we've got... Apparently there's been some kind of news disaster. Edward Hughes apparently has walked out. There's been some kind of row. I'm not quite sure what's happened. We'll try and get to the bottom of it. We'll try and see whether we can replace him in some way before the end of the show. But if not, we'll just have to do the news ourselves. I can do the news.
Yeah, Stormy McLeod was involved, Mike. I think.
Well, Stormy, yeah. See, once you start getting people like that involved, I mean, it's the story that I want to talk to you about, which is on page 3 of the Daily Mail today, which may have some relevance to the events going on behind the scenes in the newsroom, is that British women are apparently the angriest in Europe. I mean, I know we're all a bit angry from time to time because of the way the political situation is running in this country, but apparently, according to a study that's been done, a global study, nearly a quarter of people reported feeling furious in this country, compared with around 1 in 7 who live on the continent. I mean, what do you think that's about? Bad sentiment seems to be growing. Women in the UK, 47% more likely to feel angry than in the previous year. So why do you think that could be? Why do you think women, according to the Hologic Global Women's Health Index Survey, which is a bit of a mouthful, to be honest, rates around Europe are remaining stable on average. The report polled more than 76,000 women and girls aged over 15 worldwide, found those in Britain were anything but their reserved and polite stereotype. 30% of the UK reported feeling sadness, as opposed to a European average of 25%. And around 4 in 10 from Britain and the rest of Europe said they were worried. A third of women from Britain claimed they were in pain, which is up 10% from the year before. Very strange, isn't it? Maybe you can let me know what you think about that. Why are women in Britain more angry than they were? I mean, I think we're all, as I say, a little bit angry. Something to do with trans rights, maybe? I don't know. Who can say? But I'll tell you what we're going to do now is we're going to move on because we've got lots and lots of different guests to talk to today, and I'm delighted to say that one of them is Dr. Gavin Ashenden, who I think is here right now. Dr. Gavin, very good morning to you, sir.
Hello, Mike. Good morning.
Very good to see you. We've been having a very spirited debate this morning about what's gone wrong with our society and what's happened to the rule of law, the fact that we've now seen stories on the front pages, one on the front page of the Times, saying that the police are now going to try and do away with their two-tier policing idea, and they're going to review their racial guidance, to which I say, I don't know where we went wrong, because I was talking to Stephen Barrett a little bit earlier, because they've been given instruction, the police, and you can argue about what happened on the night that poor Henry Nowak died. But it would appear to me that the police did what they were told to do, which is to treat people differently depending on their ethnic makeup. And basically, they believe the man who says he's been racially abused because that's what they're told to do.
I think part of the problem is that when the Marxists said they were going to do a long march through the institutions, we only believed them in theory. But for the last 30 years, they've actually been doing it, and they succeeded.
Yeah.
The difficulty is when it comes to exchanging ideas, you only really know what an idea looks like in practice when something actually happens. And so, in one sense, we had all this rhetoric about exchanging the abuse of power from one group to another. We've also had the idea of racism thrust on us. Actually, I don't think I believe in racism. It's not that I don't think people can't be horrible to each other or dislike each other on sight. But actually, we're hardwired to be careful of strangers because you don't know if a stranger's coming to invade you, to rape your family, or to give you a birthday gift. Right. And it takes some time to find out. So, in a sense, there's a difference between our neighbour, whom we need to get to know and live with, and strangers who come amongst. The fact that strangers come amongst us in a different guise doesn't mean we're not supposed to interrogate them, to ask them what their intentions are. Right. The idea of assuming racism at every stage means you're never allowed to interrogate the strangers or hold them to account. Well, actually, in human sense, in terms, it's crazy. No other society has tried to do this. And what we've discovered is that a society based on this impossible idea of being anti-racist produces the disasters of the death like Henry Nowak. So now people have discovered what these ideas do. They're outraged. But we had to discover the implications of the actions until we could see the ideas in practice. And really what we need to do as a people is to do what people have the right to do, which is to rise up and repudiate them with the utmost energy and say, not in our name, not in our streets, not with our taxes, and not with our mandates. Stop it. We're having that kind of government.
Right. Well, when the Home Secretary of Great Britain and Northern Ireland has to get up in the House of Commons to say, everyone should be treated the same under the law, you kind of go, well, yeah, that was sort of what we planned many, many centuries ago, and you're the people that actually changed it.
I think the difficulty is we've misunderstood the 20th century. And it's partly because we've changed, we've lost Christianity. Now, many people think, oh, well, you're trying to make us believe in a God we don't believe in. But the difference, again, is how does the theory work out in practice? What Christianity did was to say that there is a form of equality, and that equality has to be kept. And we're learning to be, if you like, to practice that equality. If you throw out Christianity and you replace it with Marxism, you get instead this incredible theory that you treat people differently because you're trying to restore an injustice. The fact is, there are no Marxist societies where they produce justice. The idea doesn't work. We should know, looking back over the last 100 years, that this left ideology doesn't work. What it does is it damages people. It ends up with people going to prison and being executed. Well, it's the idea is coming home. We need to thoroughly repudiate this ideology. And in my opinion, I'd like to persuade people of the virtue of the belief system that we got rid of, because it worked very well.
Well, right. I mean, Kemi Badenoch's on the front page of the Daily Mail today, writing in the paper saying that this needs to be a Stephen Lawrence moment, harking back to the murder of Stephen Lawrence 33 years ago, 1993. Hard to believe it's that long ago. I mean, we must be getting old, Gavin, is all I can say. But, I mean, is this, and can it be a Stephen Lawrence moment? And in many ways, the Stephen Lawrence moment actually led us to where we are now. Because, you know, we were told, for example, back then that the police was institutionally racist. And it would appear to still be institutionally racist, but it's just now institutionally racist against white people.
Yes, that's right. They're still doing anti-racism. It's just they've changed the object. You're quite right. I mean, I like Kemi Badenoch. She sounds as though she has a lot of common sense. I don't know. I'm not sure I'd vote for her party. I think they're completely bankrupt. You don't make the same mistake 10 times. But the trouble is, as you say, it's a shame she has to reach out for that particular image because it's the wrong one.
Yeah.
I don't actually think we've never been here before, really. The moment I would reach out to would be that man who stood in front of the tank in China.
Yes.
I would reach out for the moment when in Czechoslovakia in 1968, again, they tried to repudiate the tanks coming in. The fact is haven't got physical tanks. We've got riot police and an ideological tank. And the people of our country have to rise up and stand in front of this ideological tank and say we're not going to have it. But we've not had this before. The English have been protected from this. And so, in a sense, we don't have a model, but it's absolutely not Stephen Lawrence.
No, I don't think it is. And I think that would be a mistake. But again, we've got such ingrained roots now from this ideology that you've spoken of, that you'd have to literally pull it all out right at the root in order to rework the way that everything is done. And then that would include the civil service, that would include government, that would include the army, the armed services, it would include our education system, it would include almost everything where people are taught that black is white and white is black. And I don't mean in a racial sense, but that, that you don't believe what you're seeing with your own eyes. It's like Ed Miliband gets up in Parliament yesterday, completely oblivious to the fact that the world has kind of stopped and everybody's focusing on Henry Nowak and wondering how we've got to this place. And he comes out and says that there's 1 million jobs now dependent on the net zero economy. And I just know that's not true. And politicians are now trying to pull the wool over our eyes on almost every single thing that they say and trying to make us believe something that we know isn't there.
Well, you're absolutely right. And as Sean Walsh said very wisely on your programme yesterday, they're not just stopping with that, they're trying to rewrite history. Yeah. So they're changing the facts of the present and the past. And I mean, I have no idea whether or not this can be done. I've been writing about this, and what I said yesterday was I'd like to be angry with the police. I'd like to be angry with the people who trained them. I'd like to be angry with the system, but actually we have to be angry with this idea. Yeah. We've got to, and then again, the British are not very good at this. We're rather pragmatic, phlegmatic people who are stirred into action at the last minute. Chesterton had this marvellous phrase that he said, be careful of the English, because when they get very angry, you will see something surprising. I hope we're very angry. I watched the video of the people on Southampton last night. Yeah. And someone said, gosh, this is going to get ugly. And I thought, yeah, it ought to get ugly. It needs to get very ugly indeed in order for people to realize what they've done to us and how much energy it's going to take to replace what we had and what they stole from us. So I don't know how it's going to happen. I suspect, I'm afraid, that it'll take some other incident like Henry Nowak for the fire of fury to be ignited. Yeah. So that we find the energy to get off our backsides and to rethink re-understand, re-believe, and recreate a society we want to live in, and not in this desperately terrible one they're trying to impose on.
Well, let me play a little clip with regard to that, if we can. Can we do that? Layla Cunningham last night on Newsnight was barracked and sort of tried to beat her into submission effectively about the Nigel Farage speech. that was made yesterday. Have a look at this.
Hate, anger and division. And that's what
Nigel
concerns
did not incite hate in any way. What did he say that incited hate?
He said he's having rage.
Yes, and I think the nation, that is a sentiment that the nation
that certain
feels.
people will be hardwired into his words. They respond to his words.
You cannot
and as a result
blame
of
Nigel for people protesting. I'm so sorry. People feel rage.
Well,
I saw that video,
it's
and
it's
I
not for the
felt
first
rage.
time that Nigel says something, Tommy Robinson doesn't.
They're not
something.
the same person.
Yeah, but they feed off each other.
No, they
don't fool yourself.
No,
of course
hang
they
on,
do.
don't
But
fool
it's
yourself.
the family we are not listening to.
That.
That's what's making me so angry, is that this were a reasonable family who've just lost their son. We should be uniting with them and be following their example and leading from them. What they've asked for is a campaign against knife crime.
Layla, is there any part of you that thinks the role that Nigel Farage has is a man who leads a national political party who's ahead in the polls, that he could have chosen different language which spoke to the need for calm, and instead he chose the phrase cold rage, which some people may take as permission to behave in the way they did in Southampton?
I don't accept that premise. I think Nigel was naming an anger that I felt while watching it, and I think you'll find millions of people felt watching it. They felt a cold rage watching that, because what the fundamental premises that were missing is that a boy lay there saying, "I'm stabbed," must have felt, finally the police are here. The police are going to protect me. And the police failed him. Hang on, let me speak, failed him. And nobody is asking, why did they do that?
There were lots of people.
Was it because... you are saying it's an illegitimate concern to feel anger watching that.
I'm not saying
and
that.
I don't think it is. I think it's a legitimate cold rage that I feel.
People need to know the impact of their words. And that's the
No, people
real
need
issue.
to know the impact of what's happening in that video.
The
That's
video
impact.
is wrong in terms of the officer's actions. But
I can't
the other
believe we're
thing...
debating
hold
words
on.
when we've seen the most horrific...
Hold on. Let me finish. The other thing is, Nigel goes into and various other people are talking about DEI.
It's crazy that there's whole panels about Nigel when you have a boy that was failed drastically by the police. The main question is how to prevent this from happening again.
But it doesn't always. Let's move on.
That happens on the streets a lot.
Let's all take a breath. And we should.
And that's the problem, isn't it, Gavin? Where you've got people now on technically the left side of the debate having a go at Nigel Farage, seemingly as if he's making this stuff up, whereas they're not having a go at what actually happened.
Well, you're right, and Layla Cullingham did a marvellous job there. And Nigel Farage should be complimented for using the phrase cold rage. I've been using hot rage this morning. I think, and frankly, I think what Nigel was trying to do, and in a statesmanlike way, was to try and contain the anger, and that's sensible. But I'm afraid the difficulty is that the left are so brainwashed, and they've changed the meaning of words with such effectiveness. And of course, they believe it themselves. You actually can't have a rational argument with people who have got this brainwashed. And I think that's one of the reasons why it may need more than cold rage. It may need hot rage on the streets, because we cannot persuade the people who think that Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson are the problem when they are actually the reaction to the problem that the ideology of these people has created.
Right, exactly right. And I think you make a very good point. It's the loss of meaning of so much language that we use, where there are certain words that they've kind of adopted as their own, as if nobody else can use them, And that, I think, is a massive problem, because I think we've now got a generation of people who are, say, for example, between the ages of, 19 and 27, who have bought into this hook, line and sinker because they only know one way of educating themselves and they only know one way of reacting.
Mike, that's the most serious part of the whole thing, I think, and that is that we live in a brainwashed people, and every single organ, agency of the state's been part of this. It's going to be very difficult to pull this back, and I honestly don't know how it can be done, except for the fact that there is a kind of common sense in the people, a common sense that knows that black is not white and white is not black, and that when you criticize something, it's not hate. To reduce everything to this psychotherapeutic language of pseudo equanimity well, it's just very stupid. So we find ourselves talking, trying to enlighten people who've become astonishingly stupid and bought into an idea that can never ever be delivered. I mean, if you ask proponents of the left what this Shangri-La looks like that they're taking us to, what society are they trying to emulate that's ever happened, having been built on these ideas, they don't have one. It's an idea always of attack and undermining. Essentially, what they hate is what we had. And one of the reasons why they're constantly attacking it with such moral vigor is that they hate competence. They hate real equality. They hate people thinking freely. They hate real diversity, which includes other people having opinions other than them. But because they've had a monopoly on the language all this time, and we haven't fought back strongly enough, but partly because they've stolen our language and tried to change it. It's a cunning trick they've employed, and it's difficult to know what the antidote is, apart from rage, and to say we're not going to comply anymore.
Well, I'm watching Newsnight there, and watching other, sort of coverage from yesterday with particularly Cathy Newman. I don't know if you saw Cathy Newman's interview with Zia Yusuf. I'm not sure the media is ready to accept any kind of change because, they're all living in this ridiculous bubble, sort of Westminster or North London, whichever, take your pick. They don't really understand the people of the country. They don't really understand why people are angry. They don't get it because they're still buying into this idea that everything that the machine is telling them is right.
You're absolutely right. They really don't get it. There is no other word but brainwashed.
Yeah.
And the problem is they want to seem virtuous. They think this is the way to be good. They're actually very well motivated people. They're not bad at all. They've just they're terribly, terribly, tragically mistaken. So mistaken that when a white boy says, "I've been stabbed and I'm dying," the policeman says, "No, you're not." That's a mistake.
I know. I mean, that's the bit that's even probably the most bizarre aspect of the whole story. That, I don't think you have been, mate. One of the stabbings was apparently on his face.
Yes. How do you argue with that? How do you argue with somebody who says when you say, "I'm dying, please help me"? No, you're not dying. I mean, the difficulty is we're dealing with people who are absolutely deaf. The fact is, however, they haven't got to everybody yet, and what they do is producing a disaster. So for those of us who've not been brainwashed, we can point to the disaster. They will always then say, "Oh no, you're full of hate, and you like Nigel Farage, so he must be a bad person." And we'll say, "No, we will." I mean, tragically, we'll have to. I'm very sorry to say, we'll have to use poor Henry Nowak's death in order to say, "This is what you've done. This is the effect of your policies. This is you have." Been, if you like, a conspirator in this murder, and we're holding you accountable. We're not going to do this anymore. I'm afraid we do need cold fury. Congratulations for Nigel for using that level of restraint. But it will turn into hot fury too. And until it does turn into hot fury, and until I think, for example, let me put something really quite controversial out there. I think we need a citizens' police force. I thought when you talked to Bishop Gier yesterday, and the idea of guardians.
Well, it's beginning to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it should happen. We need guardians, civil guardians, to take care of white people, so that if my son goes onto the street, he can be protected, because he won't be protected by the police.
Right.
So we need a different police force, and we are entitled, in fact, to provide it for ourselves. The police force are supposed to work for the community. If they don't work, we have to use force of numbers, force of commitment, force of integrity in order to be able to change the way that our societies work, or else we have been imprisoned already, and we have to break out of this prison in some kind of way. Firstly, ideologically, but if they try to use the police to constrain us, then we will have to break out by sheer the force of numbers and commitment. It's that serious. It's either that or be locked up and let our children be stabbed.
It is indeed, and I mean, again, you end up following things that have been happening in America for many years. I mean, I was living in New York when the Guardian Angels launched themselves, and Curtis Sleeman was walking around the West Village to protect, actually, interestingly enough, a lot of gay people who were getting attacked, and that was a good thing. Similarly, years and years ago, up in Bishop's Avenue in Highgate, in Hampstead, where there's multi-million-pound houses and very wealthy people, they've had their own private security and private police force, patrolling the streets for years, right? And so now suddenly the rest of us have to do the same thing because the police simply can't look after us.
Well, I'm afraid that's exactly true. And the gay community were absolutely entitled to have guardians looking after them.
Yeah.
The Jewish community are as entitled as the gay community are to do it.
Sure.
The white community are as entitled as the Jews and the gays. We are entitled to protect ourselves against this noxious ideology that imprisons people and makes false distinctions and makes people feel righteous while they're doing it. We have to use every piece of energy we've got to make this argument. So again, congratulations on your program. Thank you for your guests. God bless all those who are committed to doing this ideologically. If they don't listen to us ideologically, we'll have to take to the streets.
Absolutely. Dr. Gavin Ashington, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed for talking such great sense to us. A lot of people very much appreciate it as well. And a lot of people saying this morning, I'm not going to stop being angry. Don't tell me not to be angry. It's not the government's business to tell me how to feel. And it really isn't. Why don't we take a leaf out of the book of some of the people who are angry and pass it on to the likes of Newsnight and the likes of Sky Television and the sort of the media moguls who think they know how people think and don't understand Britain. Maybe we should do that. Coming up, we've got loads more guests to come. We've got Jack Hadfield in the studio. He's going to be telling us what he makes of the Makenfield scenario. Also, we're going to be talking to Keith Tordoff, MBE, former West Yorkshire detective. I'll ask him about the likelihood of the police going private. I think we've got an update on the news department. I think we've managed to fix whatever the row was all about. Let's see what we've got. Let's have some news, shall we?
Good morning, all. I'm Fiona MacLeod. I would like to apologise for the sudden departure of Edward Hughes. I was sitting with him, producing the news, when he received a phonic leaf from Edwina and had to rush out of the studio. Funnily, he had just been speaking with Stormy over at the weather desk and she went bright red. Unfortunately, I'm not prepared for today's news stories, so I'll just summarise. Keir Starmer is a bell end, Rachel Reeves is Richard III, and Mr. Lammy is Isaac Newton. And these people are running the country. Hopefully Edward will be back tomorrow. That's your update. See you later, alligators.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank goodness for Fiona MacLeod there stepping into the breach when things seem to have taken a bit of a turn domestically for old Edward Hughes. Let's see whether he can sort that out. Unless it's his own fault by the sounds of it. Yeah. You've got to stay away from Stormy. Dear me. Mr. Gillespie has sent us a super chat in which he says, which is the best subscription model I can join that maximises the show's financial return? YouTube, Substack or another? Keep up the great work. I'm not sure what the answer is to that, really. You probably Substack, I would guess. Mr. Gillespie is probably the best way to go. And then you can watch the show ad-free if you're a contributor. And you will also get, because we're going to announce this actually, we played at the top of the hour when there was a bit of a news emergency, a clip from the live show at Shepherd's Bush. That's going to be coming out shortly as a show that you can actually watch in its entirety. It's a couple of hours long, I think, isn't it? Yeah. And if you're a Substack member or you're a YouTube member, meaning you pay to get the ad-free content, you will get that free as well. So it's a good reason to sign up to the Substack, because otherwise you'll have to pay for it. One from Red Rock who says, Peter is a top guest, good knowledge and style. I'm on LinkedIn with him. Ask him to check my message later. I need to pick his brains. Okay. Red Rock says he's A. Duncan on LinkedIn. I'm not on LinkedIn anymore. They had a massive data breach a few years ago and I gave it up. Also, it was kind of annoying. It's probably the most annoying social media thing because people can look you up and then you find out who they are, and then you remember why you didn't like them in the first place. Something like that. Anyway, let us talk now to our next guest, who is in fact a former West Yorkshire detective for 20 years. He worked in the CID, he worked in the Vice Squad, he worked in Special Branch. He is Keith Tordoff, MBE. Keith, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm loving the poster behind you. That's Raquel Welch, isn't it?
It is, that's correct. Yeah, we have a poster gallery that we run.
I once when I was working in New York once for a few years, I used to have a thing called call waiting on my phone, you know, where if you're on the phone to somebody, it would go beep and you press a button, you get the other person on the other phone. Yeah. And I was talking to the Times business news desk because I was doing some work for them. And my phone went beep. And I went, hang on a second, I've just got another call. And it said, hi, is this Mike Graham? I said, yeah. It says, hey, this is Raquel Welch. I was like, what? And it was Raquel Welch because I'd put a request in to interview her. And I went back to the Times guys and I went, I'm sorry guys, I've got to go. I've got Racco Welsh on the other phone.
Yeah, I think I'd make that priority.
I think so, absolutely right. Listen, good to see you, Keith. We've not spoken before, so forgive me if I ask you questions that I should know the answers to. But obviously, you know, the world and its wife is focused very much on the night in question last December when Henry Nowak sadly died because he was murdered. The police are now in the firing line because of what they did. My argument this morning has been, it seems to me, from what we know about the guidance that police officers are currently given, that they probably, as ham-fisted as it was what they did and how awful it looked, they were probably following orders, weren't they?
Absolutely. It's the recruitment and training, Mike. That's been the biggest problem with the police for some time. Not this government, previous governments going right back. And whilst there was almost probably some political interference with policing, certainly since police crime commissioners, mayors, that gives a lot of power to political parties, and the senior police officers pander and follow directions directly, quite often I think from government, and certainly from the hierarchy. And that's the big issue, I think, that training, recruitment, the shortage of police officers always shouted about, and we're going to recruit more. They recruit that fast that the retention level is horrendous, and police officers constantly leaving. The experienced officers are no longer there to pass on the knowledge and how to deal with things. So it's a real collapse of the policing system, which needs root and branch reform. And it starts at the top. The fish starts stinking from the head. So, you know, we're always blaming the poor police officers on the ground who make mistakes, and they're human at the end of the day. They are you and me. They are our children who join. They join to do a good job. They want to help people, you know, preserve life, save property, arrest people. They're all joined with that intensity. They don't join to do something which is going to have massive impact on other people's lives, their own lives, their families. And, you know, that's what we lose sight of. They are human at the end of the day. We're not looking at the people who are creating the problems. In 2021, I stood independently in North Yorkshire to become the Police Fire Crime Commissioner of North Yorkshire, funded by myself and my wife's own money, to try and be elected, to try and, because I could see what the problems were. The policing is horrendous. They've no idea how to talk to people. You know, it's quasi-military, and that's in the terms of the uniform and how they go about things. There was always knife crime when I was policing. Yes, it's historic. It's, you know, 30 years ago. But we were dealing with people with knives. We were dealing with people with Stanley knives at football matches, slashing people and things like that. So but we knew how to deal with them, how to talk to them. And when I see officers now going to deal with situations, you can see that they've no idea. There's no leadership.
No. And so, I mean, is it an issue of hiring the wrong people? Or are they too young when they come in? Do they not know enough about life? Are they sort of in need of a better recruitment process, a better education, perhaps?
I don't think it's education. I think DEI has obviously made the difference, because the forces are instructed by politicians that we need so many from such and such a group, so many genders, etc. And what we've lost track of is police were made up of people like me. I, you know, started off working Leeds Kirkgate Market selling fruit and veg, and people who had some life experience, maybe been in the services, people who've been mechanicking, all different walks of life. And we've lost that. Now, there needs to be people who come from, you know, good education system, because they've got their own qualities, their own abilities. But to then say that they should be the rapidly promoted and become the senior officers, unfortunately, people become institutionalised. I didn't, until I left the police, I didn't realise for most probably a year or two afterwards that I'd been institutionalised. You would follow the instructions. So if you're instructed by people around you to do things a certain way as a young police officer, you tend to carry that out because you think it's the norm. You know, go and do that. And when I look back, I made mistakes. I did silly things. You know, I've got a certain amount of sympathy for those officers who went to Henry Nowak, because on the way there, I don't know what's been said on the way there, on the radio, in the van, what they're expecting when they get there. Most probably they're imagining it's somebody who's drunk, somebody who's been on drugs. They see somebody on the floor. They've got seconds to, you know, make a reaction in the dark, not noticing things, maybe not fully hearing things. And I'm not trying to defend them. What I'm saying is that we've got to accept these are young people who really, they've been led, they've been trained badly. That's what it's about. There's no experience there. We need experienced people saying, no, this is the way it's done, and challenging these senior officers and politicians. Politicians are to blame. And the trouble with this situation is we're all basically turning on the police at the moment. And I say they've got massive failings, police. That's why I wanted to be police fire crime commissioner, because I could see the failings. Unhealthy, unfit, not able to speak to people, scruffy, you name it. But at the end of the day, the senior officers are the ones who should be held to account.
Right.
And there isn't.
But I mean, what a lot of people have said to me, Keith, though, over the course of the last few days, having seen the footage, I assume you've watched it.
I have, yes.
I think people find it hard to imagine that the police could not see that Henry was in distress, that they couldn't see that he'd been stabbed, that they couldn't see. And you said it was dark. I mean, it wasn't pitch black. It was outside the house, it seems. I mean, it seems incredible that they couldn't notice that he was in a bad way.
But Mike, I've been in those situations, and until you're faced with those situations, you've got split seconds to react to these things. Sometimes you don't notice the blood. Sometimes, you don't notice an injury. And also, when you're arriving there, there's a certain amount of adrenaline pumping. What are we going to face? Is it, especially with what's going on, is somebody there with a knife attacking people?
Sure.
Is this guy on the ground suddenly going to get up and start fighting us? We can't see properly. I think people are making judgments without actually looking fully into it. I can understand 100% the family's anger, the family's distress that they feel they've been let down, although they've credited the investigation team afterwards and the family support unit afterwards of the police. So we've got the two sides there. We've got the police who are getting blamed because they're on the ground making split-second decisions, and the people who've got time afterwards, as I did as an investigating officer, to interview people, to get the full facts in the cold light of day, put a case together. And that's the two sides. Now, the family have praised the one side that they've seen and had close contact with, understandably. The other side, which is from camera footage, at least the cameras were on this occasion. I mean, how many times do we hear about stories with MPs and people whose phones they haven't kept records of? The cameras were not on when an incident took place on the underground, etc.
I get all that. But I think the point is that, unfortunately, there are several things, even if you were to give the benefit of the doubt to the police officers and to say, look, they were worried, they weren't sure, they've been in other situations where the guy on the ground has got up. Surely at some point they would have I mean, it's the way they spoke to him as well, I think, which is what people find a bit astonishing. I mean, I for example, call me old-fashioned. If I'm interacting with a police officer, I would expect the police officer to call me sir, no matter what the situation. I wouldn't expect them to call me mate. And I know that's a minor thing, but it's a kind of, but it's an important thing.
I disagree with you, Mike. You're talking about people who are dealing with, quite often, not in this situation, but in other situations where they go into pubs, clubs, fights and all. They can't start calling sir all the time. That ain't the kind of training you want. So you will say,
why not?
Mate, you will say, sorry?
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Because
they're public servants at the end of the day. They're not the Stasi. They're not stormtroopers, right? They're not coming in to kick the hell out of people. They're coming in to calm a situation, if necessary, to arrest people who are causing trouble. So they should first assume, rather than the people they're dealing with are bad, that they're good, shouldn't they?
Well, you could say then, right, the training should, if they're expected to call people sir, all the people who were rioting last night and throwing bricks and dustbins at the police should call all those people
Well,
sir.
That's a bit different. No, now you're being silly. Now you're being silly.
No, I don't think
I'm talking about you going into a situation, there's a guy lying on the ground.
Mike, I've done it. I've been to fights, I've been to clubs, I've been beaten up, I've ended up in hospital twice. So I can assure you, the last thing you're thinking about is calling somebody sir in these kind of situations. So I don't think that's part of the necessary training.
Well, yes, I'm telling you how people feel about what they've seen, though. That's my point.
I understand that. They've seen a short amount of footage, something that within 3 minutes, they basically were doing CPR on this young man. So within 3 minutes, time flies in those situations when you're doing and dealing with things. I'm not defending the police. I think that's where I'm maybe being misunderstood. I'm saying that you've got to look at, they've got absolutely seconds passing by. You've got people saying things. You've got the actual murderer trying to influence your decision. You respond training-wise, and always have done, to the people who've made the complaint. Now, in this case, it was the brother of the murderer who was the complainant. So the police training used to be that you go and you speak to the complainant first, not the actual other person.
Yeah, no, I get all that. I get all that.
But I mean, Mike, you go to somebody who's lying on the floor, sir, I'm sorry, sir, are you okay? No, he said mate, okay? It didn't maybe the perfect word, but it's a modern type saying. People say, I mean, a lot of the police I've dealt with say, hi guys, how are you? When I'm with a group of people. I don't like that. No. I don't like being saying, how guys? And they say it to my wife, hi guys. I mean, my wife don't like that, but we've got to accept terminology, wording is now changed. But I think it's very unrealistic to start calling people sir.
Well, maybe it would be a good place to start, though, if you want to get the police back that were the police when you were around, when people had respect for each other, when they treated each other properly. Maybe that's where we've started to go wrong, because we're all calling each other mate, and then now it's all gone to hell in a handcart.
Well, I'd have to disagree with you, Mike. I didn't call people sir when I was dealing with fights and people on the ground and not knowing who'd been knifed, who'd been slashed, etc. I dealt with a first-class incident where somebody had been slashed across the throat with a Stanley knife, and he was attacking somebody else. We arrested him at first because we didn't realise the other person had slashed his throat right across with a Stanley knife. Now, I ain't calling people sir when I'm fighting. I'm getting covered in blood, shit, snot, etc. So, but let's be realistic about it.
Yeah, well, you listen, I've not spent as much time in North Yorkshire as you have, so I'll bow to your superior knowledge. West Yorkshire. All right, okay.
I actually went down and worked with the Met on a secondment, etc. So I've got vast experience of both practical police. I was a firearms senior officer, training officer, so I used to deal with firearms incidents. You've got split seconds, mate, and this is what people lose.
But that's the job. That's the job, though, Keith. You know, if you can't do it, don't do it. It's what I would say.
Absolutely, but those police officers, it's easy to all pile on, and the politicians have found out. What we ought to be looking at is going and saying, it's you, the politicians, they are driving us to fight each other, be divisive. The Sikh community, I've dealt with them in West Yorkshire, are fantastic people. There's always bad apples in every kind of...
But nobody's attacking the Sikh community, so, you know, I mean...
Well, I think there is an element of that.
Not really. I've not seen anyone attacking the Sikh community. Who's done that?
Well, certainly the Sikhs have had to come out and make it quite clear.
Well, they've come out and said things, but nobody's attacked them. But listen, Keith, I've got to run. We'll have to come back and talk to you some more, because I feel a good argument coming on with you, and I quite like that. So we'll do that again soon. Good to see you.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Keith. Where is he? I've forgotten. Where is he? Keith. Keith Tordoff, MBE. I can see myself having a couple of goes at him at some point in the future. We're running out of time, though, because time is against us. We've got Jack Hadfield here with us. Jack, very good morning to you. Welcome to the Mike Graham Show. I think for the first time. We haven't had you in here before, have we?
No, not in studio.
No, we've had you on.
I was down the line.
We've had you on, but in studio you get to see the finery of everything that Pooch has done. So you're here to talk to us about not just the big stories of the day, but also Makerfield and what's going on. I see that Question Time's got a big number going on tonight with all the various different representatives of all the different parties, most of them anyway. I was talking earlier to Peter Barnes, who was saying that he still thinks reform might just do it. Andy Burnham is doing his kind of level best to say nothing at all by putting out these daily kind of video diaries. What have you been up there? What have you made of it all?
No, I haven't been up there yet, but I am planning on doing so. I do think that, from the beginning, I thought that reform definitely had a chance. You looked at the original poll with Burnham there, it was around between 41% reform, 43% Burnham, so already within the margin of error. And I do think now, obviously, you know, the story that that's been on everyone's lips now is the murder of Henry Nowak, but it's not on the lips of Andy Burnham.
No.
It's been well over 24 hours since the body cam release.
He's not said anything, has he?
Hasn't said a single thing.
Right.
And I think that obviously because reform have just gone so hard on this, and I think it's an issue that is so emotive to people, they're thinking, well, this guy wants to be the next Prime Minister of this country, and he hasn't said a word. Even Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrats, which is now completely ballsing up their political strategy, even he's put something out about it. So I think when you're messing up, and this is my point, is that I think Burnham still has a lot of chances to mess up, and Reform are running a very tight campaign right now. I also do think, obviously, Restore has been attacking Reform seemingly from the right, and I think the polls had them around 7%. I think that's a bit overblown.
Yeah.
I think they're going to get somewhere between 2 to 4
Oh, really?
or
Okay.
5.
It's interesting because, I mean, that poll that everybody quotes with 7% is a very, very small sample, isn't it?
Exactly.
And I've always been told, and I've said this ad nauseam, probably people are going to go, oh, you're saying the same thing again. Anything less than 2,000 people, you can't really take it too seriously.
No.
But why do you think it's less than 7 then?
Well, because from what I've heard from the ground from people who've been out there in terms of what they've seen knocking on doors, the responses from people, the actual campaign that Restore Britain have been doing, like their candidate seems to have vanished off the face of the map. I think she's done one interview with Vox Populi. I know they've
she's
been
not on the not on the Question Time panel tonight.
No, and that's interesting. So I do think actually they should be on the panel because if you look, they certainly are. Even with the polls, I still think they're going to do better than the Conservatives. Like the Conservatives
are on the panel. I think the Greens are on the panel tonight as well. So there's no reason why they shouldn't be, unless, of course, Restore have said actually we don't want to put her on there, and they might be just doing that without telling anyone.
Well, that is possible. I think there was an interview with Lowe in The Spectator, which was meant to be an interview with Rebecca Shepherd, and she's only done this interview with Vox Populi. Restore don't like talking to unfriendly media in general. I think Lowe said in this interview with David Shipley that he believed there was this conspiracy of silence where people didn't want to interview him. But Connor Tomlinson, who's not part of Restore but is friends with the Restore guys, he said on a video of his, he said, no, actually they're deliberately not letting Lowe do these interviews because they don't want to play that game. And I think, frankly, if they come under fire, come under serious scrutiny, certainly on Question Time, I think if they were there, they would completely fall apart.
Well, that's an interesting one as well for the Reform candidate too, because Kenyon has also been accused of all sorts of things that he may have to defend on Question Time tonight, in regards to his things that he said in the past. I mean, he's always defended them whenever he's been asked about it. But I mean, it's quite a risky strategy in a way for Reform to put him up there, although at least he ran as a candidate in the last election, didn't he?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think he's definitely going to get ganged up on tonight. It's going to be a tough panel for him. I think he'll probably be all right, but I would be surprised if he didn't take at least a few blows. I think, if somebody brought up the Carol Fortman comments, for example, even though he didn't say that, these are things that can be defended, and certainly he has been defending himself. Reform has obviously had his back on this, but when you've got a sort of hectoring panel of 4 other people and a presenter as well, it's also not going to be on side. We haven't seen him perform under this level of fire yet. So, will he crumble a little bit? I think he's going to be all right, but there could be some cracks.
It's interesting what you say, though, because I mentioned this earlier when I was talking to Peter Barnes, that sometimes there is just one overarching story that can have an effect on an election, whether it's a by-election or a general. And I think this story will have that effect. The Henry Nowak story. And as you say, if Andy Burnham continually refuses to comment on it or doesn't speak about it, I mean, again, he'll be on the panel tonight, so maybe he'll be asked to say something, and maybe he's holding his fire for that moment. But I mean, I'm finding his daily kind of video diary to be really quite irritating because he never says anything. He doesn't. We don't know what his policy is on anything. He talks about, I love running around here. It's really great. I think yesterday he was boasting about, I ran into somebody that I helped out a few years ago with some problem they had. And it's all rather meaningless kind of pap. It's not. It's not really anything solid. And if he really, really believes that he thinks he should be the Prime Minister of this country, he's going to have to surely give a bit more away, isn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, right now he's trying to be all things to all men, which is why he's been flip-flopping back and forth on so many of his policies. Europe, the economy when it comes to bond markets. Obviously, he's flipped back on the immigration reforms that Shabana Mahmood has done. Initially, he didn't support them. Now he will. So the thing is, that's a question the voters of Makerfield have to ask themselves. What Prime Minister is Andy Burnham going to be? And if he's already flip-flopping on 4 or 5 major issues already and just, putting out vox pops that are just a spiel of vague localism, like, oh, I love living around here, I do.
And I've lived here all my life, which turns out not to be entirely true. I mean, I posed a possible scenario in which I said, because about 2 or 3 years ago that he moved to the area, roughly, right? And it's not entirely inconceivable that he did that with a view to, at some point in the future, possibly becoming the local constituency MP if he decided to go back into Westminster. Because when he became the mayor, he said he would serve his full term, which if he wins this, he won't, right? He's also, apparently, according to a piece in the Mail yesterday by Nadine Dorries, he applied to 26 other MPs to ask them to stand down before he got to Makerfield. So, it's not exactly as though, he's always had it in his heart of hearts to be the Makerfield MP, particularly since it's only been a constituency since 2024 anyway.
Yeah, and I think you can see this in the attack ads that Reform have been doing against him, and that's I think they're right to run on this idea that he is just using Makerfield as a springboard for his own political goals and doesn't care about the people of Makerfield, whereas obviously their candidate is born and bred there, is running on that entire thing. But it's not just about that. I think you do have to hit him on the issues as well. And I think Zia Youssef had a video where he was saying, actually, Andy Burnham would put illegal immigrants in your constituency and would continue to support this. You can't just run on the local issues, but certainly that is something that people in Makerfield, they don't want to be taken for granted. I mean, they're already, they already have this sort of Whig and Lancastrian rather than Mancunian identity. And obviously he's running as the mayor of Greater Manchester.
Well, Peter Barnes is from there, and he was saying exactly that it's not, they don't consider themselves to be part of Manchester, they consider themselves to be part of Lancashire. Which is interesting. Also, we've got I didn't know we did this actually, but apparently there's a poll out on YouTube that we put out yesterday. Is Andy Burnham king of the North, king of U-turns, or king of nothing? 20,000 people have voted in this, Pooch. Do you know that?
I thought you put it out.
No, I didn't put it out. No, I think Charlotte must have done it. Anyway, king of nothing is top with 93%. King of the North gets 2%. And king of U-turns gets 5%. We could do king of shorts if you like for that. But king of eyebrows, yeah. But I mean, king of nothing, 93%. I've always doubted Andy Burnham as a credible figure because he wasn't a particularly memorable MP. When he came out and said at the beginning of his campaign, the last 40 years, politics has failed the people of this country and particularly of this constituency. You go, well, hang on a minute. You were involved in politics for 35 of those 40 years, including being a spad to Chris Smith in the first Blair government of 1997, and including being Minister of Health, including being Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, including being in the shadow cabinets of, Ed Miliband and Jeremy Corbyn, and I think even maybe not quite Starmer, because I think that was when he went. But he's been involved in Labour politics since the age of 15. He's not Mr. Normal. He's not. He's a wonk, for want of a better word.
Yeah, I heard a good joke about this the other day, where it's a Bangor, a Blairite, a Brownite, a Starmerite, and a Corbynite walk into a bar. The bartender says, "Your usual, Mr. Burnham."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's very true. And I just don't think he cuts through with anyone other than sort of Labour apparatchiks. It's a bit like when Keir Starmer appointed Gordon Brown and Harriet Harman back into the government, and everybody from the Labour Party said, oh, very, very well-respected people. Not in the general population, they're not. People think Gordon Brown was a terrible Prime Minister. It turns out he wasn't much of a Chancellor either. And Harriet Harman is not well liked at all in the general population. It might well be that in the Labour Party, people like Andy Burnham in the same way they like Angela Rayner. But the British public don't like any of these people.
I would say I think Burnham did have an appeal to a certain section of the population, sort of northern dad types who see what he's doing
Cyclists,
as mayor. Cyclists in a way.
Cycle.
Mayor of Greater Manchester, but certainly some people who might be like Labour reform swingy. But it's very easy to be the metropolitan mayor of a big city when you can just do things like, that's free public transport, public transport links, or stuff like that. That's pretty easy to do. Whereas, if you look now when he's starting to come under fire, obviously as a potential future prime minister of this country, the cracks are massively opening up in Burnham's persona, and whether people who might have liked him beforehand, didn't really think about him that much.
Right.
So now they are, and now they see what he's doing on the campaign, and they're like, actually, on second thoughts, maybe not.
Also, I think there is definitely a fatigue amongst people in that neck of the woods, because they voted for Josh Simons. You know, they were quite happy to have him, and many of them actually thought he was quite a good MP. Having stepped down, they now have to have another election, and we were sort of joking about it yesterday, saying, you know, imagine if you lived there, you know, constantly people knocking on the door saying, which way are you going to vote? You know, get lost, and you set the dog on them, you know. But in the end, people are going, well, how dare he just assume that he can swan in, get elected, and then become the Prime Minister? I mean, that's not how democracy is supposed to work, is it?
No, exactly not. And I think it is funny where, obviously, some of the Labour campaigners have been going, oh, you know, we need to win this election so we can have a Labour MP in this constituency. It's like, you had one until 5 minutes ago. But I do think a very funny outcome of all of this is that Reform wins in Makerfield, certainly Burnham loses, and then obviously he can't go again. Oh, can somebody else resign? Get me another constituency.
Yeah, right.
That it's completely over for him. And then let's say then Streeting and or Rayner try a leadership campaign against Starmer, and then they fail, and Starmer eventually, at the end of this, just comes out on top, surviving all of the potential assassins. That would be, frankly, the funniest outcome to me.
It would be the funniest outcome, but not for us, unfortunately. For us, it would be absolutely pathetically hopeless, because we'd end up with a kind of a dead duck Prime Minister for the next 3 years, you know. And at least with Burnham, it would somehow be deserving, I suppose, if Starmer lost his job, because I feel that Starmer should be given that message to say, look, you made such a mess of everything. You didn't do anything you promised you would do. You've completely ruined the economy. You've completely ruined the country's culture. So it basically just bugger off. You know, that would be good. But you spoke about how easy it is to be a metropolitan mayor in this day and age. Have a look at this, right? This is Sadiq Khan, who we spoke about the other day. Went over to Saudi Arabia for the Hajj, right? And he's shaved all his hair off. Let's have a look.
Anyone seeing you today can't fail to notice a dramatic change in your appearance.
Well, I've recently returned from the Hajj pilgrimage last week in Mecca. It was a humbling experience for me. It was a spiritual experience for me. Thousands of Londoners were there as well. Part of the pilgrimage is at the end, if you're a bloke, you shave your hair to just part with the ego and to make me more humble. So the new hairstyle is for that reason. I hope people like it.
Is it a permanent look?
No, I'm going to grow back my hair. I miss my hair.
I hope people like it. Well, very much like everything about Sadiq Khan. No, we don't like it. We don't like you either. We quite like it if you'd stayed in Saudi Arabia. Maybe you could run Jeddah and see if you can put a couple of cycle lanes in there. See how they like it in the oil-rich nation that they are, because they drive around in huge, great pickup trucks there. It's like America, isn't it? Because I didn't realise, in fact, until I saw pictures of the way the road system works in Saudi Arabia. It looks like America.
Oh, yeah.
Know? It does not look like London.
Well, obviously, if you got the oil price that cheap, you know, it's funny. Similar when you see Americans complaining about petrol prices, then you do the calculation, and it's like, God, they're complaining about a raise that brings it up to about half or a third of our price already.
Yeah, it's about 50p a gallon or something, petrol there. Pooch was just asking about Josh Simons there. What's in it for him to walk away from the job that he had on a very nice, comfortable £110,000 salary, plus all the perks and all the rest of it? I'm hearing that he would be offered some kind of job in government, or perhaps even a seat in the House of Lords. Yeah. Because that's how corrupt they all are.
I mean, he's got to get some kind of comfy position after that, surely. Yeah. You know, for sacrificing your potential political career, and certainly. But then you could say, well, if a general election was going to be happening anyway, I think, you know, without Burnham, that seat was already going safe reform. Yeah. So maybe they didn't have to bribe him with something that big. Just go to him and it's like, look, if Starmer's there, you're losing your seat regardless. You've got only a couple of years left. Do this for us so you can get a nice cushy House of Lords job, or something else that's kind of like, mid-level government apparatchik. Frankly, I think if I were a Labour MP looking at the polls now, I might jump to that.
Yeah, I suppose so. Listen, great to see you. We'll do keep in touch, and when you're up there, maybe let us know.
Will do.
We'll put you on live from the streets of Makerfield. Jack Hadfield there reporting into us on what's the likely outcome. Still possibly a win for reform. It's still not out of the question. And interesting what he's got to say about Restore as well, not doing perhaps as well as they're making out that they are. We shall see. Coming up, we're going to talk about Ed Miliband and net zero with Andrew Montford from the net zero campaign, against net zero rather than for it, by the way. Also, Paul Naylor's going to join us a bit later on from the Alliance of British Drivers. Not sure what he's going to say. But first, let's get some more news with Fiona McLeod.
Good morning, all. I'm Fiona McLeod. I would like to apologise for the sudden departure of Edward Hughes. I was sitting with him, producing the news, when he received a phonic leave from Edwina and had to rush out of the studio. Funnily, he had just been speaking with Stormy over at the weather desk and she went bright red. Unfortunately, I'm not prepared for today's news stories, so I'll just summarise. Keir Starmer is a bell end, Rachel Reeves is Richard III, and Mr. Lammy is Isaac Newton. And these people are running the country. Hopefully Edward will be back tomorrow. That's your update. See you later, alligators.
I'm not sure I want Edward back tomorrow. She said Edward will be back tomorrow. I mean, should we not give him a bit of a leave of absence? Yeah, I mean, there's something very odd going on with him. I don't think he's concentrating on the job. Well, there's that, but I think he's not concentrating. He's obviously very distracted. This is what happens when you start getting involved with the people you work with. It's not a good idea. Honestly, you shouldn't do it. Anyone can tell you that. Now, before we speak to Andrew Montford, let's have a quick look at the man that we'd forgotten all about until today. And I'm sorry to say I'm going to do this to you, but here he is, Ed Miliband. I can't really do Ed Miliband, actually, but let's have a look at Ed Miliband. Here he is talking about the net zero economy.
Today we set out the proposal for the 7th carbon budget, as new research from CBI Economics shows over 1 million workers are now supported by the UK's net zero economy. This comes after 2025 set a new record for solar generation, and already in 2026 we've set a new record for offshore wind generation. We're taking these steps because they're the right choice for energy security, for investment in good jobs and growth, and for doing the right thing for future generations and preventing climate breakdown.
So, the more he says the same, the less he sounds sensible, doesn't he? I mean, you'd think that with all of the Henry Nowak stuff going on, and with the state of the economy, and with the worries that we've all got about safety on the streets of Britain, that Miliband would keep his trap shut for a while. But no. Instead, he decided to go out there and tell us that there's apparently 1 million jobs being created by net zero, which I think anybody with any sense would know is a load of old cobblers. Let's talk to Andrew Montford and find out what he makes of it all. Andrew, very good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Mike. How's things?
Yeah, good. Very good. I'm sorry to say, I thought I'd seen the last of Ed Miliband. I thought he was keeping his head down just in case there was going to be a sudden opportunity to kind of, launch himself at 10 Downing Street when it all goes horribly wrong for Starmer. But sadly, I was disappointed.
Yeah, you always get this sinking feeling when Ed sort of sticks his head above the parapet, don't you? Because you know he's going to announce something crazy that is going to be absolutely ruinous for us. And, well, he hasn't disappointed this time, has he?
No, he really hasn't. But, I mean, what do you make of this claim of his that all of these jobs have been created? I assume it's just more rubbish coming from his lips.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually not a new thing. I mean, we produced a report years ago about claims about green jobs. And, it was pointed out then, I mean, I think that was probably the best part of 10, 15 years ago, saying that, if you are going to include things like, I don't know, bus driver as a green job, well, I mean, it makes a nonsense of the whole thing. So, here we are in 2026, and they're doing exactly the same thing again. They say, oh, well, we've created a load of jobs in the wind farm industry, and those people are going to spend money, and that's going to create jobs in the rest of the economy. And it's just completely fictional. There's loads and loads of jobs in there that are things that existed long before net zero had even been thought of. So,
Right.
Nuclear power, for example, it's absolutely nonsensical. So, yeah, we really should just completely dismiss this report. The other interesting aspect of the report was, of course, that Ed Miliband claimed that the report came from the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, which was, let's call that being economic with the actuality, because the BBC made the same claim about a week ago when the report first appeared, and they had to correct it because it wasn't true. The report was actually produced by CBI Economics, which is, if you like, a subsidiary of the CBI, and it had been commissioned by a green blob organization. So the idea that this was some sort of independent analysis is just ridiculous. And we know what to expect, don't we, Mike? I mean, this is just the way that the government behaves. They try to spin their way out of every problem, and we essentially, you can't trust anything they say.
No, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, they've now kind of legitimized lying effectively. I mean, they've probably not been very good at it because so much of what they say is transparently false. But I mean, this was supposedly their 7th carbon budget that Miliband's put out, I think, yesterday, saying that there's going to be an 87% emissions reduction covering 2038 to 2042. I mean, it doesn't mean anything, does it? I mean, they might as well say, by the time we get to 2038, we're all going to be wearing pink and standing in a vat of oil. I mean, you say whatever you like about what's going to happen in 2038 because nobody even knows if we're still going to be around.
No, that's right. I mean, I think if Miliband gets his way, he will have collapsed the economy a long time before we get there. I mean, so the idea that there's going to be any carbon emissions to save in 2038 is highly speculative, shall we say?
Well, exactly. And I mean, I've completely forgotten what the rules even are now. I mean, I can't remember what the emissions rules are around cars. I mean, I remember they originally had said that they want to do away with all petrol and diesel cars by, I think it was 2030, wasn't it? And I think they've now pushed that back to 2035, or the Tories did that. I mean, where are we with that? I mean, if you want to buy a new car, for example, now, as I want to do in the next sort of 6 months or so, is there any point in getting a petrol car?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say there is a point in getting a petrol car. I mean, I think if we just sort of stand back from this a bit, Mike, the fact is that whoever is in government in 2029 or whenever the next election is going to change direction dramatically, either because they want to, if it's reform, or the Conservatives, or even restore, they all want to change. But even if we get another Labour government, they are going to be forced to change direction because it is going to be an economic disaster if we carry on with these delusional policies that Ed Miliband is promoting. So, in some ways, I'm not as pessimistic as I was a few years ago because I think we are going to get change. So, if you're buying a car now, yes, buy a petrol one, because whoever gets into power is going to have to do away with the zero emission vehicle mandate because simply people can't afford the extra cost of buying EVs. Even with the subsidies, they're more expensive. So that is going to go. The carbon emissions reductions targets are going to go. The renewables will go as quickly as anybody can possibly make them. And then there is I think a chance that we will get back on to a more sane policy path. But in the meantime, Ed Miliband is going to be causing a huge amount of harm. And, I think we, in sort of campaigning organizations and in the media need to be sort of doing what we can to rein Miliband in and sort of curb his excesses.
Well, Tony Blair did us all a favour, didn't he, the other day when he came out and said that he thought net zero was not quite what it was sold as and not quite perhaps what the answer was.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony Blair's intervention was extremely useful, particularly when he said that Ed Miliband was delusional, which I think is absolutely right. He is delusional. And it's very good that he's saying that what we're doing isn't going to work and is going to be essentially disastrous. Unfortunately, he did still say that we have to do net zero, which is not actually true. It's not even a rational statement. But I think when we were talking about this in the office, the view was that Blair had gone as far as he could. If he had actually come out and said net zero is madness, well, he would have been disowned by many of his natural supporters. But to say that it is going to be a disaster in the direction we're going, he can get away with. So that I think was extremely useful, and I think will shift a lot of people away from the path of madness. So that's very useful.
Well, it is, because at the very least, it kind of clips Miliband's wings a little bit, doesn't it? Because it means that he can't go, everybody agrees that this is what we have to do, because clearly everybody doesn't agree this is what we have to do anymore.
Absolutely. He's starting to look a little bit isolated, isn't he? I mean, if the Blairites are against it and all the opposition parties are against it, then, the Greens aren't even interested in climate change anymore. They
don't mention it.
Palestine.
Right.
So, it's only the Brownites, if you like, who still think this is a rational proposition, and they are starting to look isolated. Also, we're isolated internationally, aren't we? I mean, the Americans aren't doing this. Europe is turning away from this. I mean, there's countries all over Europe who are reopening coal-fired power stations. Right. I mean, that's how isolated the UK is now. Everybody's looking at us and going, well, that's crazy. Let's not do that.
No. And also, even for those kind of virtue signalling types who have Teslas and things like that, sorry, Pooch, they know that actually the economy is dying on its backside, and whenever the money is not around, it's not so easy to do the nice virtue signalling thing and do the right thing and, buy green and, spend loads and loads of money offsetting your carbon and all the rest of it. Nobody wants to do that when there's no money.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, this is we are reaching crunch point, aren't we? I mean, the national debt is so enormous. We simply cannot afford to throw subsidies at green scams, if you like, and to sort of put money into, I don't know, cycle lanes and that sort of thing. All that's going to go. I mean, there's a lot of money to be cut just in the money that the government spends on net zero. So that sort of research and cycle lanes and all that sort of stuff. I reckon there's more than 10 billion a year to go in that.
Right.
We're sort of well over 20 billion on sort of the costs of subsidies to the electricity system and paying wind farms to switch off and all that kind of stuff. There's huge amounts of money that we can save, put back into people's pockets and get the economy going again. But it's going to take a brave government to face down the green blob, and that's what we've got to pray for.
Right. Although, let's look at Andy Burnham. I mean, up in Manchester, he spent a bucket load of money, 100 million quid, I think, minimum, depending on who you speak to, sometimes maybe even 200 million, on putting in a clean air zone and putting in a sort of ULEZ scenario where loads of cameras have been erected and lots of sort of, specifically cycle lanes have been built. But then people voted against it. And apparently in Makerfield, if you walk around there, there's a load of cameras which were set up to film people breaking the law on congestion charging and all the rest of it, which are now dormant and which have got signs on them saying under review, because the people said, no, we don't want it. We don't want to pay money to drive into Manchester, thanks very much. So they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, so many of these green policies are extremely unpopular with people. I mean, it's not just things like the ULEZ zones. I mean, in Miliband's carbon budget announcement, is one of the things that has come out of that is that we're all going to have to stop eating less meat. And you can imagine how that's going to go down in places like Makerfield. I mean, it's just people see this as a sort of an affectation of the wealthy middle classes, and it is generally the wealthy middle classes who are pushing these stuff. The man in the street doesn't think the weather in 2050 is an important issue.
No, of course not, because we're not going to be alive for a start. I mean, I certainly don't think I am. But I mean, maybe we'll get down to, if things get any worse, it'll be eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. We'll just start eating the pets, because we won't have any money to buy beef anymore because it's too expensive.
Yeah, I mean, well, I live out in the country, Mike, and the thought has occurred to me that maybe I will need to go and get a shotgun so that I can go and hunt some meat for my supper.
I mean, it is a sort of, there is that sort of Mad Max effect that if it all deteriorates in a horrible way, you'll be in a good place if you're living in the country. The pheasants, you get the odd rabbit, I've got a garden full of rabbits down there. But I don't.
Absolutely.
I
I mean,
want to
where
kill
I live, we've also got fossil fuels. There's coal bed methane, so we could actually start our own sort of fossil fuel powered sort of mini kingdom after the UK
Brilliant.
breaks down.
Yeah.
After a few years of Prime Minister Miliband.
It'd be like when you drive around in California and you go past somebody's house and they've got their own sort of oil derrick just in the back garden, just one, and that's how they make their money, and they power the entire house with their own oil, but they also sell it,
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, this is why oil and gas is so much more popular in America, because the resource belongs to the landowner. So the landowner is going, yes, come and drill a well in my back garden because I'll get rich on the proceeds.
Absolutely right.
I have suggested this before, that actually the way to get fracking off the ground in the UK is to put the resource back into the hands of property owners, and then they would start lobbying for it.
And just start fracking in your own backyard. That's a great idea. I've got some other good news for you as well, by the way. I don't know how much you know about the World Meteorological Organization, known as the WMO, which, as you might expect, is run by the United Nations. They've apparently come out with a suggestion that there's going to be the imminent return of El Nino, which, to be honest, I didn't know had gone away. But apparently it's coming back, and it means that there's going to be more global temperature rises, worse rainfall. Apparently there's an 80% chance of it forming before September, a 90% chance before November. But they then say, rather helpfully, they can't actually make a proper projection because the forecasters are still in a window of uncertainty. In other words, it's a load of old cobblers.
Well, I mean, El Nino is not really, it's not a load of old cobblers. It's a well-known weather phenomenon.
I know. I'm not saying El Nino is a load of old cobblers. I'm saying their powers of prediction are a load of old cobblers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the things that is certainly true about El Nino. You can't predict it, or they can't predict it. It's cyclical. You get this sort of some years, some periods are El Ninos and some are La Nina, and it's just a natural oscillation of weather systems, mainly in the Pacific, but it does affect the rest of the globe too. And they can't predict it. They can predict the weather in 50 years' time, they say, but no, they can't predict El Nino for the next 2 to 3 years. It's a bit of a nonsense. But yeah, it has relatively well understood effects on weather around the world, and I think in the UK it will make us we can expect a warm year. I mean, certainly, for the last week or so here it's been unusually warm and humid. That kind of weather, I think, is what we will tend to see in El Ninos. It's nothing to get excited about. So if they're not trying to scaremonger about it, that would be good. But of course, it's the UN, so I'm sure they're sort of trying to hype it up as much as they possibly can.
Well, they've got to justify their own existence, haven't they? I mean, if they don't come out with these kind of reports, then people will start wondering what they're up to.
Yeah, I mean, this is true of all, if you like, the blob. It's not just the international blob, the UN and things like that. It's also, the blob in national government. They have understood for several decades that they can increase their income by scaremongering. If you are involved in saving the planet, then your income is much higher than if you're merely doing something that's sort of academic interest. So yeah, they like to hype up the fear as much as they possibly can. And I think there is there's a task for the next government, isn't there, to actually sort of make it clear to these organizations that they essentially they should be punished for doing this. If they scaremonger, it's just like, well, look, we're not going to fund you. We can't have scaremongering as the basis for government. We need to have sort of rational, calm, measured thought.
That would be nice. I mean, I'd wonder, actually, you may know the answer to this. I don't. But I mean, do we still give the United Nations bucket loads of money?
Yeah, I think we do. Apparently the Americans don't. They are cutting.
Yeah, well, I think Trump stopped giving them, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And my understanding is there are large, many UN organizations are now, sort of on the brink almost of running out of money because the Americans are simply refusing to fund them anymore. And when you look at some of the things that the UN has got up to over the years, Well, yes, absolutely. They do deserve to be defunded. I mean, yeah, the whole climate scam has been, has been driven by the UN. So absolutely, yeah, let's take their money away because, they have wrecked the economy of much of the world.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's shocking.
They should pay a price for it.
Absolutely right. Where's that Jim Dale clip? Because not clip, but we had Jim Dale on last week, which was very funny. We need Jim Dale on this section to inject some common sense, says John. Yeah, I noticed
You'll
that.
wait a while, I think.
I certainly will. Well, I banned him actually from the show that I used to do at Talk, but I was convinced to bring him on this time to speak against. I think it was what's his name? Paul Burgess, who you probably know, who of course destroyed him completely, and he just looked like a complete idiot. And I see, by the way, that from I think it's Alex Armstrong at GB News is suing him. Because he's said such horrible, terrible things about him on Twitter, and he's such a ghastly individual. I don't think we'll have him back on again, will we? No, thanks. I think not. He really is.
Yeah,
anyway,
he's quite a character. I know he's got into trouble on Twitter before, actually. So, I think it's a difficult problem for broadcasters. I think to find people who are willing to make a calm and rational case for environmentalism, for net zero, or whatever. So many of them just come on and want to rant and to accuse you of being funded by big oil or something.
There's that other idiot, Donachie, whatever his name is.
McCarthy. It's every single time. It doesn't matter what you say.
Kind of
well, you're funded by big oil, so I don't care.
Yeah.
And he won't present any.
I once went on
you're funded by big oil. It's just words.
I once went on GMB with him to argue the case about cyclists or something, and he ended up arguing that people who drove cars should actually wear crash helmets, because it's more likely that they're going to injure their heads while driving than cyclists are. And I just kind of went, well, I can't really argue. I can't really say anything to you about that. That's just insane. Can you imagine? Anyway, listen, great to see you. Very good to talk to you. Andrew Montford there from the Global Warming Policy Foundation, Deputy Director, of course, of the same organisation, a great organisation, does some brilliant work. Now, we've got a few interesting things to do here before we talk to Paul Naylor, because I'll tell you what, yesterday, a song was sent to me by Donna Louise, who is a follower of mine on Twitter. And I don't know whether she's actually in Makerfield, but she's done a song about Makerfield. And it's not terribly friendly to Andy Burnham, but I just thought we should give it a bit of an outing because it's very well put together. And she's got a little video that she's done as well. Should we have a look?
Makerfield says no. Makerfield says no. No. Makerfield says no. Andy Burnham rolled into town with a speech and a borrowed crown. Said he'd stand for Makerfield, but the people said no deal. He smiled for the cameras, waved his hand like he already owned the land. But every street and every door said we've heard all this before. No more promises dressed in red. No more lies we've all been fed. Makerfield knows what it needs. Not another labor plea. Makerfield says no, no, no. Andy Burnham, you can go. We don't want your empty show. We don't want labor anymore. Rejecting labor, loud and clear. Andy Burnham's not wanted here. Makerfield.
I think that's really good. She's a very talented woman, Donna Louise. I don't know. I mean, I said to her, does the music come from any particular place? Because sometimes if you play music on our YouTube show, you get the copyright marked, and they tell you can't use it. But so it's all AI generated apparently. So very good. Well done, Donna Louise. And clearly, not everybody is as fond of Andy Burnham as he is of himself. Richard says that could be our Eurovision entry next year. Well, he couldn't do any worse than the last guy. What was his name? Yes Computer or something? Or Mum, I'm on the computer. Mum, I've got nil point. I don't watch it either. Great song, says Hamwacker. I think it's really good. Hamwacker. Well, that's his name. I don't know. Have I said something wrong? This has the Eurovision entry written all over it, says Jay. Yeah, I think it's very good. And here's the latest on Andy Burnham, by the way. We didn't play his video diary from yesterday because it's so boring, right? But apparently last night he ruled out going to the polls if he becomes Prime Minister, raising fears Labour will be dragged further to the left without a mandate from the country. God almighty. Reports at the weekend suggested Mr Burnham had been wargaming a snap vote, but his spokesman yesterday ruled this out and indicated he intends to serve a full term. I'm sorry, I'm really struggling with this whole Andy Burnham idea that, you know, just because he wants to be Prime, it's like me saying, you know what, I fancy being Prime Minister. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the safest seat that I can find that Labour have got. Maybe it's Keir Starmer's seat. And I'm going to say to Keir Starmer, or I'm going to do that thing like they do in The King of Comedy, just take him hostage and tie him up and put him in a chair in a dark room. Great movie, that, isn't it? One of my favourite Robert De Niro films. And Jerry Lewis, of course, is the main sort of character in it. Yeah, so you just go, right, I'm going to run and I'm going to be a new Labour candidate and then I'm going to be Prime Minister for the next 3 years because, you know, I want it. I deserve it. I'm very good at it. Just ridiculous, yeah? He's been campaigning in Makerfield now for, 3 weeks? And he says he's going to change Labour. Yeah, good idea. Let's change Labour. Let's get them out. Let's have an election and let's get reform in. A couple of super chats, possibly. Or have we done them? Oh, Loyal says this morning, my question is why they didn't call an ambulance straight away. They could have interviewed Henry if he survived later. R.I.P. Henry Nowak. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I had that conversation with Keith, the former copper, who said that, you know, they did call an ambulance 3 minutes later. I find it very difficult to listen to. Now, I've heard a lot of former policemen talking about how the police are not at fault, how you go into a situation like that and you're never sure exactly what is what and where is where and who is who. But I just think they should be better at that, shouldn't they? Red Rock says this, Mike, I'm at 63 years young, have started a political community. Would love to be on the show. My channel will be The Political World, or The Political Word. How do I get my details to you? I'm a branch organiser for Advance UK. Is there a way of what's the best way of getting in touch? Is there? Well, I guess you could. If you're on the Substack, join the Substack and put a message there, and then Substack is a good place because you can leave a message there for our Substack community, and then we can. Donna Louise there, thanks for the shout out. Good to see you watching, Donna Louise. Brilliant song, by the way. Maybe we'll have to get her on. Yeah. Let's have a little chat. I don't know if you're in Makerfield. If you are, she could be our correspondent. I quite like that idea, you know. No, but seriously, if you want to get in touch with us, the best way is to get in touch via Substack. I know some of you have wanted to send things to us, but we haven't really got a place to do that anymore. Partly because we've got so much stuff I mean, it's very kind that you all want to send us things, but we've got so much stuff that we got sent in the first 2 or 3 months of our existence. We haven't really got any more room for anything. Maybe when we get set up and running with the new studio, we could ask for some more things, but we've got so much. Please play that song every morning. It had a good kitchen dance, says Barker. Yeah, I like it. Oh, maybe we will. We play it every day until the actual by-election. What do you think? That could be good. Now, coming up, I'm going to have a go at language in my meltdown. But first of all, before we do anything else, let's get Fiona McLeod back with some news headlines.
Good morning, all. I'm Fiona McLeod. I would like to apologise for the sudden departure of Edward Hughes. I was sitting with him, producing the news, when he received a phonic leave from Edwina and had to rush out of the studio. Funnily, he had just been speaking with Stormy over at the weather desk and she went bright red. Unfortunately, I'm not prepared for today's news stories, so I'll just summarise. Keir Starmer is a bell end, Rachel Reeves is Richard III, and Mr. Lammy is Isaac Newton. And these people are running the country. Hopefully Edward will be back tomorrow. That's your update. See you later, alligators.
Thank you, Fiona, for stepping into the breach. I'd be more than happy to just keep her on for the rest of the week at this point. I mean, it's Thursday tomorrow, isn't it? Where is this week going, by the way? I've only got 2 more shows and then I'm going away. Can't quite believe it. I'm not saying. You might spot me at the airport. Do you know, once we were going on holiday somewhere, and I can't remember when it was, but we were going through Gatwick Airport, and as usual, I was having a row with my kid's mother. Some guy tweets out, "Just seen Mike Graham in a row with his missus at the airport." I was like, "Great, thanks, man." Yeah, she wasn't happy, as you can imagine. What was I going to say? But is that heron moving?
Yeah, at the beginning, I'm sure.
Is it moving?
I'm sure.
Because I wasn't sure if I was seeing things, but it sort of slightly shifted, didn't it?
It did.
Mike, why don't you do some MG mugs that people can purchase? Yeah, I'll get Pooch to sort that out because he loves doing merch. We've actually got some merchandise that Donald organised for the live show. I think we could give all this away. So I said to Donald, why don't we get some merch done? And he went, yeah, good idea. So I said, why don't we get some T-shirts, maybe a couple of hats, you know, some bumper stickers, yeah. All right. I said, why don't you do it that way where you get the, when people order it, then the shirt gets made, which is, you know, what I would think is a sensible way to do it. So otherwise you end up getting loads of shirts made and you can't get rid of them. So he didn't do that. No. So he thought he'd just make a load of shirts, but he made them all the same size. And they're all in Pooch's. Because people came to the live show and quite a few of them bought them. But they're all extra large, I think, aren't they? And so now we're stuck with a load of shirts. And we could either wait until we do another live show, right, maybe, or we might set up a shop. But I think Donald's going to do that. If you're watching Donald, we're looking forward to that. Because it's quite complicated to do all that sort of thing. But there's a link there for the tickets, and what I'm going to do is we're going to put out a little advert, basically, because you can now watch the live show in a few days' time. If you're a subscriber to our Substack and you're a paid subscriber, you'll get it for free. If you're a member of our YouTube community, then you will also get it for free. Otherwise, you'll have to pay, I'm afraid, to watch it. But that's just to pay for production. It's not to make a bucket load of money, because that's not what we do. And maybe we'll send you a free shirt if you're extra large size. Anyway, should we do the meltdown? Now, it's come to my attention that the virtue signallers have decided to start changing our language, and I'm not very happy about it. It started with Ukraine, which used to be known as the Ukraine, right? And apparently ever since Zelensky's taken it over, you can't call it the Ukraine anymore because that's a bit too jingoistic and harks back to the days of British Empire. So now, same with Crimea. You can't call it the Crimea anymore. You have to call it Crimea, which I suppose doesn't really bother most people. But then it started happening in Lebanon as well, which used to be known as the Lebanon. But when they started, firing rockets at Israel recently, apparently we were all supposed to call it Lebanon as opposed to the Lebanon. I don't really see what difference it makes. When they started changing the name of Kiev, though, that's when I really started to get a bit wound up. When you watch television, radio, listen to that, it's all about Kyiv. There was a bombing last night in Kyiv. The Russians launched some missiles at Kyiv. Well, it's not Kyiv, is it? It's Kiev. I mean, they can call it Kyiv if they want, in the same way that if you're French, you can call Paris, Paris, although we do call Saint-Tropez, Saint-Tropez, but that's always been the way. But the most recent abomination, as far as I'm concerned, was yesterday when I noticed that everybody now seems to be calling Shabana Mahmoud, like you're some kind of guttural Arab speaker. Shabana Mahmoud. Why? Why can't you just call her Shabana Mahmood? What's wrong with that? There used to be an American comedian whose name I've forgotten, who used to do Saturday Night Live in the good old days with Chevy Chase and all those guys. And she had a character called Roseanne Adana, who was a newsreader, a bit like Fiona McLeod, actually, only not quite so breathy. And she used to completely mangle all of the sort of names of countries in South America, like El Salvador, she would say, or Nicaragua, And she would do it, but then, because then sort of normal network television newsreaders started doing the same thing. And they would start saying Nicaragua. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Because you don't say, for example, Cologne in Germany. You don't go Köln, do you? It's not pronounced like that. I mean, you're a linguist, Pooch. I mean, you don't say German names differently. Berlin, you call it Berlin. Munich, you don't call it München.
München, no.
Right? You don't go to München for the beer fest, the Oktoberfest. No. So it's all a bit performative, isn't it? It's all a bit virtue signally, you know. I'm not keen either on the way that they've renamed all those cities Rosanna Dana, there you go. Gilda Radner, that was her. I think was she not married to another American comedian?
Sure. Do you want to hold it up to camera?
Yeah, there she is. Rosanna Dana. Oh, hang on, that way. There you go. I think she was married to, I can see his face.
Click on the link.
Click on the link and it will say. Rosanna Dana. Gilda Radner. Let's see. I can't find it. Oh, hang on. Gilda Radner. Here you go. Gilda Radner, American actress. Gene Wilder she was married to, that's right. Yeah, so they were quite the couple, you know. That was a very funny show in those days. The other one that got me was when they started, you know, when you can't, you're not allowed to call Bombay anymore, right? No. To call it Mumbai. Yeah. And the worst one, I think, is Madras, which they've changed to something completely different. Chennai, that's right. Because they've got a cricket team, haven't they, called the Chennai Warriors or something like that. I mean, why? What's wrong with... And Calcutta, they call Calcutta now Kolkot, right? Something like that. Yeah. The best one, my favourite of all time was Turkey, when they changed the name of Turkey. And I did this actually on the old show on Talk. Chicken Kiev. There you go. It's Chicken Kiev, isn't it? You can't change it. Turkey, when they announced it and they went, we've changed the name of Turkey. And I went, oh, great. What is it now? Turkey. But it's just spelt slightly differently. And you hear actually, if you watch Sky, which is I don't recommend, but and any of these kind of virtue signalling shows, the BBC, they call it Turkey, because it's got a Turkiye, Turkey. It's still Turkey, right? Talking Turkey. Football commentators do it when they're pronouncing Spanish players' names. Yeah, they're all at it, aren't they? They're all trying to prove that they're cleverer than you by knowing how to pronounce things. Not a lot of old cobblers. All I know is that it says here in the Daily Mail, British women are the angriest in Europe. That's the best story of the day for me. I can't argue with it. I don't know why they're so angry. It's not my fault, as I said earlier. But can we stop, please, with this virtue signalling, you know, ridiculous pronunciation cobblers? You know, Turkey is Turkey. Reformed Chicken Kiev, SMG. I mean, are there other examples that people can think of? Oh, Czechia, yeah. That's great, isn't it? Czechia is annoying. Yeah, there's one from Cheesecake. Yeah, it sounds like a game. Yeah, I'm just off to play a game of Czechia. Really? Yeah. You know, Bishop to King 3 or something. What? Valencia. That's a good one, yeah. Valencia. When they start doing this.
They all start with Beijing.
Beijing, yeah, Peking. Funnily enough, Peter Hitchens is very big on that. He refuses to call it Beijing. He calls it Peking all the time. And you know, I just think it's another erosion, isn't it, of our history. Why shouldn't we call places by the names we used to call them? You know?
Do they do it in reverse?
I don't know. I mean, we haven't changed. I mean, that'll be the next thing, won't it? Somebody will come up with a name for Birmingham in Hindi or something. You'll have to call it by some Hindi name. Start calling it Mumbai. Birmingham. That'll be next. I'm not joking. There's some idiot who'll come up with it. You know, Sadiq Khan. Well, Londonistan is what a lot of people call it, don't they? I'm not happy about it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't always do a meltdown when I'm not really angry about it. But I'm fed up with it, right? So if you go to Turkey for holidays, or Czechia, which used to be the Czech Republic. It used to be Czechoslovakia, actually, but now it's two different countries. One's called Slovakia and one's called the Czech Republic. You see what they did there? They just split the word up. Easy. You know? It's like, I suppose the French call Scotland Écosse, don't they? And you used to go up to Scotland, I remember, and it was really, really annoying, because these kind of, virtue signalling Scottish people would have on the back of the car, instead of GB, which is what we all had to go to Europe, they'd have ICOS. And you go, why? Why have you got Scotland in French on the back of your car, which is English? Well, British. I don't know. I don't know what gets into people's heads, you know? Anyway, that's my meltdown for the day. Donald's not happy. Hang on, I'm just going to read this out 1 second.
I'm not doing the shop.
He's gone, you're taking the piss now. Let the truth be told, there were 3 sizes of shirts agreed by you, both medium, large and extra large. And as we didn't want to pay a monthly distribution fee, Pooch said he would set up a Shopify account, which now he doesn't want to do.
They're comments.
Oh, man. So, I mean, well, I was told Donald was doing it. So anyway, he wants to do it. Yeah. So there we are. Anyway, if you fancy an extra large shirt, get in touch with Donald.
We'll put his address up.
Yeah, we'll put his address up. There's going to be trouble and then there are hills.
And then the Highlands.
And the Highlands, aye. Oh, look, we got for William Yarble's in tomorrow. Kinsey Schofield as well, great. Jamie Jenkins. Ben Pyle, haven't seen him for a while, that's good. Nice. Alison Long, I don't know who she is. Do I know Alison Long? Not sure. Anyway, listen, now it's time to talk to our next guest, who is Paul Naylor from the Alliance of British Drivers. Charlotte's booked him in because she thinks that I need some help with all the fines I've been getting. But actually, I haven't had any fines for a while, which is good news. But Paul, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Morning.
Good to see you.
I so happen to be an extra large, so if you can get one in the post to me, that'd be
Oh,
brilliant.
great. No problem at all. I'll get one. I'll get Donald to send one off to you. Yeah, his address is coming. Listen, we were talking earlier just with our last guest, Andrew Montford, about cars, funnily enough, about, because electric cars are now going to become slightly more expensive, aren't they, as time goes on, because all of the breaks that you were going to get for driving one are going to disappear as the government sort of tries to claw back a load of money from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like driving around a mobile phone anyway. They're disposable. I mean, that's already been proven.
Yeah.
My father-in-law went to a breaker's yard not long ago to get a spare part for his partner's car, and there was a row of electric vehicles there. I think he said there was about 9 or 10. They all looked fairly new.
Right.
And he said, "Why are these here?" And he said, "Well, the battery's gone wrong on them, and it's an insurance write-off because replacing the battery would be more than the car's actually worth."
Yeah, right. Well, that's the problem, is they don't tell you how long the battery lasts, do they? And if the battery then becomes extinct, as it were, you can't really do anything with it. You can't bury it in the ground. You can't send it up to space. It's like, it becomes a sort of a drain on the earth, if you like. And the new battery is about 15,000, 20,000 quid, isn't it?
Oh, it's a ridiculous amount of money, yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's not just, well, in most vehicles, it's not just one battery. The car is laden with batteries in every it's sort of like nook and cranny they can cram them into, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all seen footage of electric vehicles on fire as well. I mean, they're such a hazard. I mean, if people want them, let them have them. We believe in freedom of choice.
I'm not going to mention any names, but somebody not far away from here has just got a Tesla and he's very happy with it. I mean, apparently it does some incredible things. It parks itself, apparently, which is quite cool. And I mean, there might be petrol cars that do that, but apparently he's going to show me later. You just put it in front of, because I've never been sure about these kind of robotic self-driving cars.
No.
Of which I've seen a few. There's a bunch of them now called Waymos driving around in London at the moment. I don't know if you've been here recently, but
no.
There's a load of them driving around, and I didn't know that they were doing this, but they're basically driverless cars. I pulled up next to one the other day at the traffic lights and looked into the front seat. There's nobody there. I was going, that's a bit weird, because what I don't know, for example, is what happens if you hit one. Or it bumps into you. What do you do then? You can't get out and exchange, details with it, can you?
Well, there is that. But I mean, you would hope that if they're confident enough to put these automated cars out onto the road, that they, that they are precise and driven somewhat by satellite technology to be in the right part of the road at the right time. But accidents will happen, like you say, and
Yeah, but I mean, I'm wondering whether we should have been told. I mean, I presume they're operating as some kind of taxi type service, right? But why haven't we been told by the city or by Sadiq Khan's office that there are now however many of these cars driving around London?
Oh, well, why would he tell you anything?
Well, that's true. I mean, he's only just had his haircut, But no, but it bothers me because I feel like I mean, are they paying congestion charge? How does that work? I don't know.
Good point. I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, isn't it? I mean,
and what happens if they break this?
Good morning.
Oh,
Good
hello,
morning.
Fiona. Steady. keep it in your trousers. Anyway, so let's talk about the terrible state of having to be a motorist these days, and how difficult it is to drive around without getting fined for something.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what the Alliance of British Drivers exists for. We're here to campaign on behalf of the 37 million plus drivers out there on the roads who just want to be able to get from A to B without being sort of fined at every sort of point of the journey. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we're up against these days, Mike, as drivers. One of the latest ones that I got caught by in Stoke-on-Trent, of all places, was a bus gate. Well, sadly, I don't live too far from it.
Yeah, bus gates are a real nightmare because you don't even know that you're in one, right?
Exactly. I mean, a bus gate, I mean, you would imagine a gate. There's no physical thing there. It's just literally, if you're lucky, you catch a gaze of the sign as you get near it. But when you're used to driving through certain parts of the road network and you're familiar with it, and I mean, we're all guilty of it. You become very sort of almost automated. And I was driving through to drop somebody off at the station, and didn't spot that it had become a bus gate area.
Right.
And as a result, a few days later, received a lovely letter through the post asking me for £70 or £35 if I paid up pretty rapidly.
That's not bad, actually, because if that was London, you'd be getting 180 or 90,
Yeah, you're probably right. But, the fact that they offer you this half-price nonsense just so that you just hurriedly do it and sort of just sweep it under the rug, it's just a money-making machine at the end of the day. There was no reason for it to be a bus gate. I mean, what is a bus gate anyway?
Exactly, because it's basically a restriction that you don't know about with a sign somewhere that you can't see so that they can fine you. I mean, it's basically a revenue-raising thing, isn't it?
Of course it is, yeah. And I mean, with all these fines that we're going to talk about, it just goes into the pot. It doesn't go to sort of improve the road network. No. It doesn't go to improve anything for the driver. It goes into the pot, and so therefore goes to somewhere in Brumby to pay for people that don't want to work.
I love that. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, and now they've also, in London, they've started doing this thing where they've got restricted use of a road during certain times. And I've been caught out a couple of times by this. There was one road around me, which I didn't know about, because there's a school there and they've got this sign, which is sort of off. It's not even on the same road. It's in a sort of side road pointing the other way, which says you can't drive down it between, I think it's 9:15 and 9:45 in the morning, and 3:15 and 3:45 in the afternoon. And I got two of them in the same week because it was the only way I could get to the shopping centre where I was going locally, because the other two roads were closed because of roadworks, right? So I just had to pay those. And I tried to, I think, appeal one saying I never saw the sign. The sign isn't visible, and they didn't accept that. My latest one is a parking fine. I went up on a Sunday to a place up in North London to do a thing with Dan Wootton at his nearest studio. And I was told, don't worry about parking because it's a Sunday, so you should be fine. So I found a parking spot, and it was one of those streets where there's lots of curbs and driveways, so there weren't that many places to park. But then I found one, parked there, saw there was a bus stop, but I thought, well, I'm far enough away from the bus stop. Didn't see any markings at all, right? Came back, had a ticket. And it turns out I was parked inside the bus stop square, but all the paint had worn off the road. So I couldn't see it. So I've appealed that. So that's currently pending, that one. But I think if I have to pay it, it's about, I think it's 80 quid with the 50% discount.
Yeah.
So it's 160. It's 160 pounds for one hour of parking in a place that I didn't know I shouldn't have parked in on a Sunday.
That does sound worth challenging. If there's markings that are no longer visible, we've had all sorts of cases over the last sort of 6 months. There was one where there was a car park that had the spaces repainted, but the older spaces that were no longer valid apparently still existed, but faintly. So people were parking in them and then getting fined for not parking in the right area, which is ridiculous.
It is, and they've extended all the parking times, haven't they? So they used to be after 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. You'd be right. Now it's like going until 10 or something in a lot of places.
Yeah. Again, there's a regular car park that I've used a lot over the years that I've gone to, and like you said there, it was always traditionally after 6 p.m. you didn't have to pay anything.
Right.
So people were parking up and then wandering off to the restaurants and whatever, coming back and finding out that they were going to get a fine. My father-in-law had a great one the other week. He was shopping at Morrison's, and up the road they were doing some road works, and he'd been there a while. He'd had his breakfast there, then he'd done his shopping, and then he couldn't get off the car park. It was like gridlock trying to get off the car park because of some roadworks. And he then got a fine because the ANPR cameras detected that he'd been on the car park more than 3 hours.
Oh, for God's sake.
So he's challenged that, and he won because they proved that this roadworks, which according to the people that put the fine out, it said that there was no notification of roadworks. Well, that's not down to my father-in-law, is it, at the end of the day? But they were able to prove that the roadworks were happening.
Right.
And,
But that's the thing. You've got to be so careful. You shouldn't have to. And also, who's got the bloody time? I mean, life is busy enough. I mean, I had one of those a few years ago. They opened up a new Lidl's near me where I lived. And I thought, and I'm not a massive fan of Lidl's, but I thought I'll go and have a look and see what it's like, Parked the car, went upstairs, bought a few bits and bobs, came out, got back in the car, drove home. About 2 weeks later, got a fine of 90 quid for parking in the car park. I was like, hang on a minute, what do you want from me? I went shopping in your shop and you're now fining me for parking in the car park. And apparently there was a sign hidden away somewhere which said that you had to register your registration before you left the shop, which I didn't know.
On the plus side, you'd save £94 on your weekly shop, so it was all good.
Yeah, well, I suppose so, yeah. Except I bought a load of wine that I had to open with a corkscrew because they don't do very many screw tops, but there we are. So apparently, you have to punch, and I'm not really that happy about that. Why should I be punching in my number plate into a machine in a supermarket just for the purposes of going shopping there? I don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
So I've never been back since.
I don't blame you. Don't blame you at all. I mean, there's bus gates. Obviously, there's bus lanes. I've been caught out in London before now with that, where they just suddenly, all of a sudden, becomes a bus lane. And if you're stuck to the left of the road and you can't get over to the right, what are you supposed to do? Slam the anchors on? Ridiculous. And then there's things like, again, don't go to London very often, but there's the things like the dart charge when you go over the bridge, which used to be something where you would have to physically pay. But for many years now.
Oh, I've got a great one of those, right? I got a fine because I don't use it much, but it's one of those things you sort of forget to pay once you've gone over the bridge, because by the time you're normally going quite a fair distance, right? So I forgot to pay, but I wasn't worried because I thought I'll put some money into an account. So I had an account with money in it, and the most recent time, this was back end of last year, I think, they fined me. And I rang them up and I said, what's going on? I said, I've got an account with you and there's money in it. And they said, yeah, but we've closed it. And I said, what do you mean you've closed it? And they said, well, we've closed it because you haven't used it for a year. And I went, okay then, so where's the money? Oh, we've got the money. I said, well, why haven't you charged and so I said, well, surely you can't fine me. They said, no, we can't access the money now because we've closed the account. And I said, well, what are you going to do with the money? And they said, well, you can have it back. I went, great, send it back to me. They went, no, you have to ring up customers. I'm like, what? I have to make another phone call, which I haven't done. So it's only about 20 quid, right? But at least they did away with the fine. But they made me pay on a separate debit card for the £3.50, whatever it was, So they've still got £20 of my money.
Yeah, they make it so difficult for you to get it back.
Ridiculous.
In the end, you just go, oh, forget it. And that's what they count on,
Well. Anyway, listen, we're nearly at the end of the show. This has been great fun. Good to talk to you. Let's see if we can do some more of this, because the people are always telling me what terrible nightmares they're having in London, particularly. But great to see you. Paul Naylor from the Alliance of British Drivers. Thank you. Good to see you.
We've got a t-shirt. We've got an address just for a t-shirt. If you want a t-shirt, just put that on.
Okay. Donald McLeod won the massive Mahus of Hoos at Tartan Street, Ecos. If you want a t-shirt, send it there, yeah. But make sure you put a return address on it just in case it doesn't get accepted.
Yeah, don't bother paying
God bless you. We're running very late. Pooch is Pooch. Oh, and a poll as well. Shall we do the poll first? The poll on who are the funniest double act. Is it Reeves and Lammy, 57%? Ant and Deck 2. I can't believe they put the two mics on here, right? And it didn't even win. Eric and Ernie, 30. Came second last. Yeah. There goes the reunion then.
The Mike Perry effect.
Yeah, it's the Mike Perry effect. Thank you very much indeed. What a great show. Let's have some Pooch and Pooch's Pooch to finish up with.
You want to go for a...
What do you think? You want to...
That's a cute dog.
Really cute.
Going for a walk.
Try and go outside.
That's like Donald's dog. Yeah.
Go to the dog park.
Do you want to go for a walk?
Yes.
Do you...
Fantastic. Really good.
We got Emma's dog.
Oh yeah. This is Ziggy's nephew, and there he is, Zane. Got hiccups.
Is that a hiccup?
So cute. Yeah, really lovely. Anyway, what a great show. Thank you to everyone for taking part. That was really good. Thank you to Pooch. Thank you to Charlotte for setting it all up. Thank you to Elena for producing. And thank you to Donald for taking over the merch, because somebody's got to do it after all.
I didn't want to do it.
No, we don't want to do it. So we've taken a vote, haven't we, in the company? And it's 2-1.
2-1.
Yeah.
Well done, Donald.
Yeah, top man. Good to see you. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Don't miss it.
Why don't you relax and be a bit more MG? That would be a triumph.